Hi, what is good? I don't know what. Hi, how's it going, everybody? It's me. It's Jeff Gerstmann here in the land of video games, recording our weekly podcast, The Jeff Gerstmann Show, available wherever podcasts are found. Get yourself an RSS reader and go to town on this podcast. It's out there. That's our new slogan. The Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's out there. But we mean it's like available. Hi. How's everybody doing? It's mid-December. And the game releases are starting to slow down a little bit. I am solidifying my list of my top games of the year and coming up with some additional side categories for the advisory panel to eventually do some nominating on, and so on and so forth. And we'll probably have more on that in January. I may have my list ready before then, but this is just the logistics of voting and all that stuff that basically I have not found a good website that lets you do voting but also lets people submit options for the poll. And so I've cooked up in my head a bunch of other cockamamie ways we could do it with Discord forums and all this other stuff. I don't know. But yeah. We're gonna talk about my favorite games of the year at some point in the near future. I mean, hey, if you've been listening to the program, it's probably not that big of a surprise. The games that I like, it's like I'm not like playing it close to the vest like all year long. I shouldn't say that I like this game very much because, buddy. But hey, we'll talk about some stuff. There's so many games, big and small. I don't know if you saw this going around social media the past 24 hours or so. You probably didn't because you probably lead a cleaner life than I do and don't look at that shit as much. But there was like something. It was a bunch of screenshots of like some esports people and some streamers and stuff like that, and they were all saying like games aren't good, and there was like some variation of like complaining that like games aren't as good as they used to be or whatever. And it was like, okay, here's a fucking guy that like just plays Smash Brothers professionally, and then like a fucking Call of Duty guy, and I think another Call of Duty guy. Or it was just like, fucking, have you considered playing any other video game? Have you ever thought about maybe branching out and trying? Like such a huge year. It is such a like this year in gaming has been so diverse in terms of like big games and small games and competitive games and story driven games and all of this other stuff, that the very idea that you could look around and be like, games aren't, there's so many other, what happened to all the good games, or what happened to this and that, like I'm not saying that video games are perfect. I'm obviously there's a lot of shit fucking I just uninstalled Callisto Protocol today because I needed hard drive space, and I was like, yeah, I'll just reinstall it 6 months later when they finally fix it, and maybe check it out then. But like it's just one of those obviously these are people who are and like it's something that I look at and go like I never want to be a person who just streams one game. That seems like a disaster. That just seems like the worst possible. Like people have made a lot of money doing it, right? But like, it seems like the toll it takes on people one way or the other, where they eventually get to this point where they're like, I don't know, games are shitty now. Like, no, dumbass, you play one game, and then a new one comes out next year, and you play that one, whether it's good or bad. My brother in Christ, you probably streamed 200 hours of Call of Duty Vanguard. You dumb motherfucker. That's on you. You didn't need to play that at all. You could have uninstalled it and done literally anything else with your time. But instead, you've built a business around playing the game, whether it's good or bad. And I say, if you're going to play bad games, you could do so much better. There's so many more things out there that you could be playing that are fucking just, if you really, there's so much. There's so much good and bad across the generations, across the decades that you could be looking at. New games, old games, all that stuff. You haven't even fucking experienced the fucking true depths. It's like there was it was something else I don't know. There was something else I saw that was like what's the worst game you've ever played? Or what's the worst game of the year? And it was all people going like, Elden Ring, or it's like some super popular fucking game that like sold millions of copies and all this other stuff. And it's like, you should play more games. If that's your fucking take, like, what are the bad games? Even fucking Callisto Protocol, a game I've literally just said I fucking uninstalled because it's fucked. That's not even close to the worst game that came out this year. Did you play Hentai Survivors? That's probably not even the worst game of the year. It's probably not even in the bottom 10 of games that fucking came out this year. Hentai Survivor is pretty bad. Hentai Survivor might be the worst game that I played this year. But it's the sort of thing that when you talk about game of the year and when you talk about coming up with awards and coming up with like, we should do worst game of the year and all of this other stuff. Like you didn't play. No one played the worst game this, no one played the worst game that came out this year because like 4 people played it and it came out on Steam and it's like fucking barely. It's, there was a game that came out a few years ago. I wish I had the name of it in front of me. It's not even on Steam anymore. It got pulled. I think it might have just been called Car Game. And it was this, like, it was in early access and it was like some gray box car driving around an environment type thing. It was clearly, you look at it and go like, well, this isn't done at all. And like, no one should be selling this, but it was on sale. And then at some point, I think I found it because I sorted Steam prices by like, show me high to low. And it was in the Steam store for like $1,000. And it was just like, okay, like, is this a money laundering operation? Like, what do we, and that thing's not on Steam anymore. I still have it because I still have like a license for it or whatever. But, I don't know. I don't know how that stuff goes, but it was always, when coming up with like, awards for like a group of people to sit around and debate and all this stuff, you have to sit there and look at like, okay, like how, like we need to include nuance because worst game of the year is really broad. So you have to, I think the right way to solve it is you have like, oh, here's the worst game we played this year. Then that's going to narrow it down and make it more personal. And then you can be like, if the worst game you played this year is Elden Ring, congratulations. You only played the best games of the year, or you only played 2 games. I don't know which is worse, but like, it's just, stupid shit like that. I don't know. Like the award thing, and, of course we're coming off the Game Awards. We'll talk about that when we get into the news. The whole award thing is, it's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous on purpose. I think it's one of those things where, like, I think we were best served. Like, I always took it as like, okay, we have to take this thing super seriously while also understanding that it is ridiculous. But if we don't take it super seriously, then why would anyone else? There's a certain aspect of just like that. I think you kind of have to set aside and be like, okay, we're acknowledging that this thing is kind of dumb, but it's fun to do this, even if it's imperfect in a dozen different ways, like all of these sorts of things. I think you have to kind of just like put that aside and be like, all right, we're all going to kind of acknowledge that this is like, it's kind of whatever. But also you have to take it seriously, but also there are a lot of studios and people out there that do take that stuff somewhat serious, like more, they're like, oh wow, we won an award for this, we're gonna say, we're gonna include it in advertising, we're gonna. And so I think, you can't just be like flip and just like shit the awards out or anything like that. Like, that's crazy. You have to have an honest, like, you need to go in and have like a good faith debate about these things, I think, if you want to get a group of people together and try to pick out a game of the year. Like, that's how I always viewed it. It was one of those things that just like, especially as the years went on of doing it, is just like, this is, because like there were years at GameSpot where, we would literally get everyone into a room. And so you'd have fucking, I don't know, 30 people or something, maybe more, like sitting all the way around, like all the tables would be in a square and everyone would be sitting around the edges of it, and there would be pizza, and it was fun. But like, also, it's like, it was an exacerbated version of what a smaller group does, where it's like the loudest mouth usually wins, or can have a more persuasive argument. You'll have some people on staff that are naturally a little bit more quiet and stuff like that. And that's something like, Greg Kasavin pulled me aside one year and said, like, dude, like, you were like, basically, like, not in so many words, but he basically said you were a total dick to someone in there. And I was like, you're right. It's shitty. Yeah, you're right. What I did super fucking sucked. And since then, kind of tried to, rein it in a little bit. I don't know. But like, it's, sometimes you feel very passionately about a thing and you go all out about it. And I think that's fun too. But yeah, I don't know. The whole thing, like I said, the whole thing is like kind of fucking ridiculous when you really think about it. But it's the thing that like you have to take seriously, because you need to be able to stand by them regardless, right? Even if you're the sort of person who's just like, oh, these awards are stupid and blah blah blah, like, you have to carve them up in such a way where they are defensible arguments. That's why it's important to name things like the worst game we played instead of the worst game of the year. Because, especially in this day and age with the thousands of games that come out every single hour on the hour, you probably didn't play the worst game that came out this year. No one did. No one's going to get that category right. It's always going to be people, like, again, what they're really voting on is, here's the worst game that we played. And that's a sort of a ridiculous sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I've always enjoyed it at the same time. So we're going to be doing some version of it around these parts this year. We'll keep it pretty simple. I'll try to get some folks to put together some votes, and we can talk about it. And I will probably talk about my list, my top 10, and some of the games that maybe didn't make it, and some of the thinking that went into what's better than what, because that's also kind of an inherently nonsense argument about like, oh, well, this multiplayer shooter is clearly not as good as this single player story driven indie. Like the comparisons are even crazy. But that's the thing. It's a super serious argument about something that is inherently nuts or inherently broken. And so the thing I always wanted to get out of it was like, let's talk about some games. Let's talk about the games we liked and some that we didn't, and go from there. When I think about like what's the worst game I played this year, it probably has to be Hentai Survivors. Like, that probably is the worst. That probably is the worst game I touched all year. I don't know. I can't think of anything worse than that, but I went out of my way to find that because like whatever, Steam shoved it in my face. I almost ended up, goddamn, and I think it is called Only Fap. I don't fucking know, but like there was a game that presented itself to me via the Steam algorithm that appeared to be an idle game, a clicker type game that was also a porno game. And I was looking at it and I was like, I should probably look at this. I did not. I ended up not. But the idea of pornographic clickers is such a fucking cursed concept. But in some ways it gets around, like, you know, like, what's the worst part of all the porn games? It's the part where it's a game, right? Like, they're not out there making great video games. They're like, well, we want to make the sex look sexy. And they fail at that all the time also. But that's what they're shooting for. And then the gameplay is just straight trash. And so, I don't know, make a clicker, take it all out. In some ways, it's genius. It's a can't fail proposition, but it did not work on me because I did not try it. You know, I was like, oh, I should try this. And, you know, I've been playing some Farmers Against Potatoes Idol over here. Like, yeah, like that's, you know, Farmers Against Potatoes Idol, but instead of a guy with an axe hitting potatoes, what if it was just weird, creepy 3D model porno? I don't know. Video games. All this is to say, like, man, I'm really happy I got my hands on a 4090. I got my hands on the graphics card. We installed that last week. There's a stream up on YouTube of me manhandling that thing into a fucking case and making it go. And I will say yesterday was the first time that I like yesterday was I got it doing exactly what I wanted it to do. So, like, you know, I'm coming off a 3090. Is the 4090 better? Yeah. Is it dramatically better for the video games that are out right now? All that other stuff. Like, I have not seen a massive increase. And that's because, well, you know, like I feel like what my test bed might have been in another time would have been Callisto Protocol, because it's a, you know, it's a potentially nice looking video game, and it is very dark and shadowy. And so you're like, well, heck, this game was made to be released right at this time because it's got all this ray tracing in it and all this other stuff. And you go into that game and you turn on all the ray tracing, and even on a 4090, the frame rate still drops to 50 with everything turned all the way up, which is the exact same frame rate I got on my 3090. And so, yeah, that was, they need to do some work on that game from the sounds of things. It needs quite a bit of work. Whether that's on the optimization front or whatever. You turn off ray tracing, I do get a significantly higher frame rate on the 4090 than I did on the 3090. But yeah, that game has larger, you know, hey, I'm not fucking Digital Foundry over here, but I think I can say with some authority, that game needs some work. I played like the first hour of it or something, and I was starting to kind of get a little bit into it and be like, hey, this is neat. Yeah. But then it was like, well, but also I really want to, you know, I feel like I want to see the technical showpiece. I want to see the shadows do all the crazy, you know, I want to see that game at its crazy ultra highest. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to uninstall this and not think about it. And maybe they'll get it to a place where that stuff works. Or maybe they won't, and I just will never play it. That's acceptable as well. I would not lose sleep if I ended up not playing too much more of Callisto Protocol. It seems fine. But yeah, that's a case of just like, okay, this seems to still just run bad. Like, it didn't run great on the 3090, but like basically, you know, the difference between the two was pretty minor. And so from a game perspective, you know, like again, coming off a 3090, like, you know, stuff like, oh, Quake with ray tracing, like, yeah, I could do all that before. That ran great. That ran fine before. So what have I seen? So I played some, you know what? Let's save some of that talk for a little. Let's get an ad break out of the way, and then we'll come back. We'll talk more about graphics cards and how I thought it broke my machine and how I spent all day yesterday troubleshooting it and fixing it, and all that sort of stuff. We'll be back in a sec. What are you doing to stay safe from the threats to your data? Did you know right now someone is trying to sneak into your home right now with a gigantic magnet and that they intend to erase your hard drives with it? It's true. Wait, hang on. I'm checking here. Okay, wait. That may or may not be true. But there are many threats to your data happening every day, from simple user error to hardware failure to, gosh, I don't know, malware and viruses, viri. How do you? What's the plural of viruses? I think it's just viruses. There's a lot of stuff out there that wants to chew up your bits and spit out straight garbage. That's why you need a little something in your back pocket to keep you secure. That little something is Backblaze. Backblaze makes backing up your data super easy. All you do is you install their application. There are some minor things there you can tweak if you want it to only back up at night or during the day or all the time, or, hey, I only want you to back up these folders, but not these folders. Simple stuff. You configure it and you set it loose. And then it does the rest. It takes that data, pushes it up over the internet somewhere else where it's nice and secure. And you can access that secure data anytime via their web app on your phone. If you're not at home and you want to get to your files, it's a solid way to do that. And you can do all of this for a single Mac or PC for just $7 a month. That's it. You do that, no matter how many hard drives you've got stuffed into that case of yours, $7 a month. That's right. And you can just get at your data anytime. If you've got a ton of data to restore, let's say the magnet man snuck in and you erased all of your hard drive, they will send you stuff in the mail. They will send you a drive in the mail, whether it's a thumb drive, depending on how much you're restoring. They will send you a drive in the mail, and within 30 days, you just send it back to them once you're done copying over to your new hard drives or restored hard drives, whatever you're doing, and you get a full refund for the price of that drive. No problem. Backblaze has restored over 55 billion files. That is a lot of files. It's a lot of files. Many of those are mine, because over the years I have smoked hard drives in a variety of fashions, whether it was weird Molex connectors. Sometimes you shuck a drive to put into your PC, and suddenly you're like, well, I got to put tape over this SATA pin because otherwise the drive is, because they don't want you to shuck these drives. Sometimes things go awry. Look, be ready for anything with Backblaze. You can try out Backblaze right now with a free, fully featured, no credit card required trial right now by going to backblaze.com/Jeff. Backblaze.com/Jeff. This is great for home. This is great if you run a small business. You need that business data. And if you're working on all kinds of projects and all that other sort of stuff, you need some retention history. For an extra $2 a month, you can increase your retention history to 1 year. So if you've got like a 9-month-old file that you've written over a billion times, and you're like, oh, I need to get at this old version. You can get at this old version right now. Get that free 15-day trial today. Head over to backblaze.com/Jeff. Install it, kick the tires on it, check it out. If you like it, hey, $7 a month. And then you don't have to think about it ever again. It's nice over here, being secure. Okay, we're back. Hi. So yes, the new graphics card, the 4090, I have been impressed by it. Primarily, yesterday I was piecing together. I guess these stories are interconnected, but so I streamed on Friday, and that was the first good full stream with the graphics card installed and all this other stuff, and it shit the bed over and over again. Basically, what was happening is the display driver. I'm like staring at the event viewer, and the display driver would crash, and so the whole every monitor would just like dip for a second and come back, because it was like restoring, it was like recovering the driver and restarting the driver and working again. OBS doesn't like when that happens, and so OBS freezes up. And so I'm over here, and then that happens, and I look in my image over here on this monitor, this freaking guy has just frozen up completely. I'm like, okay. Well, now I need to open up the task manager, force kill OBS, relaunch OBS, and start the stream again. And then sometimes a minute later it'll happen again, or an hour and a half later it'll happen again, whatever it is. It was not cool. It's never cool to be like, oh, I bought a new graphics card and now, oh, my system stability has dropped through the floor. This exact thing happened to me a while ago. I'm going to say last year sometime. I was having a very similar issue with the display driver and OBS freezing up. You may remember back in the day that was happening to me. And so it was like, man, how did I fix that then? What happened? So I cleaned the display. People said, hey, you should install display driver uninstaller and boot into safe mode. So I did that and then installed the drivers. And then it's for a second there, I was like, oh, this seems, and then no, it kept happening. And so yesterday I was like, okay, well, I've got a podcast to do. I need to figure out one way or the other what the hell is going on. And so I bought a lifetime license to XSplit years ago. Remember XSplit? Remember when everyone was using XSplit and now it seems like no one uses XSplit anymore? They are still out there updating it. It still exists. And so I started setting up all of the shots on that, the ad stuff, you know, these little ad things, rebuilding those in XSplit. And I was like, man, when I'm using XSplit, it doesn't crash once. It's totally stable. Like when I'm not, and realized, oh, when OBS isn't open, this all works fine. I'm like, okay, what the fuck is going on? And so I started looking at that. And started removing sources and, you know, like, okay, is there just something going on in OBS? There was a StreamFX update. I'm sorry if this is too much minutia for you at the top of the show. There was a StreamFX update that is intended for the next version of OBS. And I installed that, not realizing at first that it was not intended for this version of OBS. And so like, okay, do I need to uninstall that? Maybe that's broken. Like, okay. Uninstall that, do this, and start pulling back on some of this other stuff, and nothing is working here. And so I could just sit here and leave it open. It's not even streaming, it's not doing anything. But if OBS is open, occasionally the desktop is just crashing and recovering and, you know, and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like staring at the event viewer, which is where every time that happens, it gets written to a log. You can open it up on Windows and stare at that log and go, yep, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. 4 minutes ago, it happened again. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on. It's something that's OBS specific. And why? OBS has this really awesome feature that actually, if not for this feature, we would probably be running out of XSplit today. It keeps logs. Everything keeps logs, right? But what you can do is it has a button that says upload current log, and it will upload the current log to their website and analyze it for common mistakes, for common problems, for just like situations that, like, you know, because you can pour over a log and stare at it and just go like, man, fuck this. I don't know what any of this shit, like it's listing every source I have, all this other stuff. And I'm like, fuck, man. So it will upload it to their website and you can go there and it'll say, here's like 5 things that we noticed that you might want to, you know, like this is mine, you know, some of it's a minor, some of it's like, hey, we prefer it if you run it in admin mode. And I'm like, yeah, I bet you do. And, hey, you're running an insider build of Windows. Not a huge problem. Just pointing it out like, But there was one thing in there that said like, there was an audio source that was in the red. It was like in the critical section of the log analyzer. And it was like, hey, this microphone is experiencing some kind of buffer overload. Something fucking bad is happening here. It is basically on fire. You need to restart OBS to get this to get this under control. Maybe that will help, but there's something about the device timestamp, blah, blah, blah. This audio input, your mic input 2 is fucked. And I look at that and I'm like, all right, that's a weird one. Like I had never seen that before. And it was the mic input that I use for these captions that are, if you're watching the video, that are below the stream. How this caption plugin works is that it wants to listen to a specific input or source in OBS to caption. And so it's basically a fake microphone that I set up that is that I keep muted, or it's not muted, it's turned all the way down so you don't hear it on stream, but it's technically this microphone in front of me again, but lowered all the way so that the caption plugin can hear it, but you don't hear it on the stream twice. Because, and again, I'm sorry for all this minutia at the top of the show. On the audio side of things, I use a device called the Go XLR. And it is an all-in-one box. It's got this button on it. Lord. It's a great button. It's got this button on it. I'm gonna gargle your piss. You know, important buttons. It's got this button on it.
Well, now I can talk like this.
And so it's, but also it's got hardware sliders and it splits up the devices. So if I need to lower the sound of a game midstream, or, you know, turn my mic up or down, or lower the audio of a game or whatever, like the hardware sliders, it has been so clutch since 2020, since starting to work from home. It's huge. Like it is expensive. It's like $500 or something, but having like a good XLR microphone, like other companies have started to do things like this. But a lot of them, like, you know, Elgato has some similar type stuff with the Wave 3 microphone, and, you know, in terms of like splitting the devices up. But it's basically doing what Voicemeeter Banana does, or, you know, what the Voicemeter software does, where it's all in software and it's creating all these different devices and you can adjust them on your screen. I like this because it is a hardware device that is literally right in front of me, and I can fucking slide these sliders up and down. Also, they are mechanical sliders, so when you adjust them on the PC, they move up and down in real life, and that's just cool. That's just fucking cool. I will say, like, before you take this as a whole, like a fully open-throated, what the fuck am I saying? Before you take this as a full-on endorsement of the Go XLR, this is the second one of these I've had to have, because the first one blew the fuck up. And that first one I had to send back to get repaired. So all of it sucks. At the end of the day, all hardware has issues, but the Go XLR has been like a literal game changer. Anyway, the thing with the Go XLR is that you do all your mixing here on the device in front of you. And then when you put that into OBS, which has its own mixer and all this other stuff, you put it in as one device that comes in called Broadcast Stream Mix. And that's your game audio, your mic audio, everything. So you don't control any audio in OBS anymore. You just say, OBS, take this one audio source and make it full fucking blast, because I'm doing it over here and I don't need you for this. But because I wanted that caption plugin to work, I created that second kind of version of the microphone in there using OBS and muted that and made it all work that way. Apparently, that was fucked. So when I saw, because it tells you what input, it says mic auxiliary 2 is jacked up. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just remove it and see what happens. As soon as I removed it, all problems solved. The display driver, my video card, stopped crashing when I removed that microphone. Also, I have had an ongoing problem with OBS for months, where I would go to launch OBS and it would not launch. It would launch, like it would know in the background that it was there, and it would be in the task manager, all the other stuff. The cameras would like light up like they were getting power. Like they're like, oh, we know, like the camera lights on the camera, the webcams and stuff would come on, but the app would never appear. Eventually, I figured out a workaround for that, which is launch OBS again. And once you launch a second instance of OBS, they both will pop up. And then you close one of them and go about your business. Removing this microphone situation Also totally fixed that. So yesterday was a roller coaster. It's someone in chat saying GoXLR was the problem. No, GoXLR was not the problem. The OBS, adding a second microphone in OBS, for some reason, it just, I don't know, maybe GoXLR contributed to it, depending on it, because it was some kind of buffer problem. It was some kind of weird buffer issue coming from basically trying to read the same microphone twice, which is not a problem in a lot of other audio apps and other stuff. Like, it's, anyway. The weird thing is I've analyzed OBS logs before and never had that come up. So I don't know what to make of that either, but it doesn't matter anymore because I removed that device. And so then I had to reroute everything to get this caption plugin working again, because it, you know, the audio device it was looking for to find the captions was no longer there. And so now it is just, I believe, pulling in everything, which is not ideal. It will just, you know, I think if I had a game with speech in it, it would probably try to caption that, which is, I don't know, maybe that's fun, but it'll try to do
Mushroom Kingdom, here we come. Mushroom Kingdom, here we come. Come, Lord.
Enjoy your gaming.
So it'll try to caption all that stuff as well. Which is probably fine. I don't I don't know. So that's what I did yesterday. Is get XSplit all set up and ready to go, which is actually good because I've been meaning to set it up as a backup in case something like this happened and I needed to have some other streaming software ready to go, for podcast purposes or what have you. So at least all that's up to date and configured and everything like that now. But yes, that seems to have fixed the graphics card stability issues. And so it's been, I shouldn't even say this out loud, but it's been rock solid ever since. And so shout out to the OBS log analyzer. What an awesome feature. It's something that they use on their Discord when, like, if you paste a log in, they have a Discord bot that will also analyze it for you, which is a cool idea. But it's, if not for that pointer in that direction, I never, ever would have thought to even touch that microphone input because it just seemed to be working as intended and all of that sort of stuff. Yes, why would it not work to begin with? Why would that be causing a buffer issue? That's a question, you know, hey, the OBS devs can tackle that someday if they get around to it. I know there's a lot. They got a new version in beta right now, that's all. The most recent updates to OBS have been pretty nice, and also kind of drove me in the direction of like, yeah, maybe now's the right time to upgrade my graphics card and go with this 4090 because of the onboard encoding. So yesterday I also did that. Yesterday I encoded videos into AV1, which is the hot new codec that nothing supports yet. But YouTube will accept AV1 encoded files. And so when I was uploading, so 2 videos hit the YouTube channel yesterday. They're from that Friday stream that was super cursed. So that's like 2 clips of like, hey, here's the parts that didn't break. And it's part 1 is me doing an energy drink taste test of this here tropical storm, which is, well, spoilers, it's pretty good. Spoilers, I'm drinking another one, but spoilers, I bought a case of them, so and we also played some Call of Duty on Friday, so I cut that chunk out and uploaded it as well. And so I'm a DaVinci Resolve user, which is a Blackmagic's video editor. It is free. There's a $300 version of it, which I have picked up. But DaVinci Resolve, if you are looking to edit videos in a Adobe Premiere-esque way, but you don't want to pay the like monthly fee or whatever, the subscription fee for Adobe Creative Cloud, because that's fucking highway robbery. I have been using DaVinci Resolve instead, and DaVinci Resolve recently added the ability to export into AV1. So all of this adds up to these videos I was cutting together on Monday needed work. So I, instead of just like, normally I just pull them into lossless cut or something because I'm not making edits to the videos. I don't need to re-render them. I just need to chop the heads and tails off of something and spit it out and upload it. But increasingly, I'm finding that I actually have to edit the videos. I do edit the episodes of Game Boys to Men, which if you go to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann, you can find out more about that. That's the Patreon exclusive podcast, me and Glenn Rubenstein going over all kinds of stuff from the early 90s. We talked about our my first trip to Las Vegas when I was 17 and how I was convinced we were going to die and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's a fun show. Anyway, that's a video and an audio show. I do some light video work to that. And so anyway, that's the long story short. I am starting to edit video more, which makes sense. It's ain't no one else around to do it. So if the videos need editing, these videos from the stream on Friday, the video files themselves were just fucked because they didn't close properly because they were crashed out. So lossless cut didn't want to take them, all of this other stuff. So DaVinci Resolve handled it. Drag them in, spit them out. Easy. And so I decided to spit them out in AV1 because the 4090, this new graphics card, again, has built-in AV1 encoders on it. So hardware support for encoding, which is cool. And so it chewed through, I want to say, an hour of the first video, the video of the energy drink taste test, and then me listening to some voicemails, which is the first one that went up yesterday. I believe it's somewhere in the 55-minute range, somewhere around there. It chewed through that video and it encoded it and spit it out in fucking like 4 minutes. 4 motherfucking minutes. That is stupid. That is stupid fucking fast. And the other one was a little bit longer. It was more like 10 or something. I don't know if that's because it was a more complicated shot of video game or whatever. But like that was a 2 hour. I think that's an hour 50 or something like that. I'd have to go look. Stupid how quickly it rendered out these AV1 files. Really good quality. Reasonable file size, because the basic idea is that AV1 is supposed to be about 40% more efficient, or the file sizes for similar visual quality is about 40% smaller. And so this is a sort of thing that when OBS, which supports AV1 for recording locally, but it can't, so Twitch does not support AV1. I can't stream to Twitch in this format yet, but when they get there, when they update to support these codecs, when YouTube can, I don't know if YouTube can handle live streaming in AV1. I think they can handle 265, which is a similarly efficient format, but not quite as new or hot, I guess. It's going to be the thing that probably allows more people to stream in 4K and do some of these other things that seem insane right now. You're like, well, who would stream in 4K, like at current bit rates and all this other stuff, the type of machine you would need? Like, having hardware encoding for AV1, when AV1 gets everywhere it needs to be, will probably be pretty fucking cool. And yeah. So anyway, long story short, the encode speed on those videos and seeing the results on the other side of it, and this was being my first taste of AV1 and all that sort of stuff, I was like, fuck, man, this is awesome. I'm so happy I bought this fucking graphics card. I know it's a stupid amount of money, but for the specific fucking work that I do, it happens to tie into a lot of different facets of it. And so, like, I came away from that going like, yeah, no, awesome. This is fucking great. This is so fucking awesome. And so it's Yeah. So I don't know, like the games and stuff, like, are they there yet? No, there just aren't enough of them that, are going to do DLSS 3 and some of the other stuff. So really it's just like, here's more power. And the 3090 already was very powerful and all this sort of stuff. And, I'm running 1440p on a 165 hertz monitor. And so, I'm not seeing like immediate performance improvement across the board in every single game I play or anything nuts like that. Right. So, but if you're coming from like a 1070 or something like that, I bet you would be like, you would shit your goddamn pants. So long story short, the cards are freaky powerful. I don't get the impression that everyone needs one. It kind of depends on what you're doing and obviously what the rest of your computer looks like and all this other stuff. I mean, obviously minimum requirements on games are only going to keep creeping up. There's a story going around yesterday about Returnal's recommended specs, and they want you to have 32 gigs of RAM to meet their recommended spec. And I think for minimum, they want 16. And so, as those games start to creep up, that's how it always is. I don't know. There's no like big conclusion to this that I'm going to reach other than just like, yep, everything is continually creeping up and all of this sort of stuff. But for me, the video encoding, like that fucking blew my mind. That blew my goddamn mind when I saw how quickly it spit those files out, and those files still looked good and they were small, and YouTube took them and turned them around fast, which is crazy too. Like, it's just, yeah, I was very impressed. Very impressed. So I might make some OBS changes now that that's stable and I can break it again, to potentially be rendering the podcast out in AV1 at the same time as I'm streaming it to you, and maybe that'll result in a faster turnaround on putting the podcast up on YouTube. I'm going to experiment with it. And anyway, it's cool. It's cool. Why don't we take one more break here? A shout out to, as I was doing research on this stuff and waiting for the card to arrive and some of this other stuff, I ended up digging around. There's a guy, he's on YouTube, calls himself the Stream Professor, Epos Vox, who has some good videos about AV1 if you kind of want to know more about it and get some comparisons about, kind of visual quality. He did the work of putting in different graphics cards and recording the same footage over and over again and all that sort of stuff. So you can go through that if you want a better, kind of more in-depth look at AV1. Let's take another break here and we'll come back, and I don't know, maybe we'll talk about video games for a change. I doubt it. It's time to take the hassle and guesswork out of shaving. I know that sounds like an insane intro, but hear me out. How many times have you looked at your razor and just been like, I bet I can get one more shave out of that. It's fine. And then you're shaving and it's tugging at your face and it's doing all the stuff that razors do when they don't work well and all of this sort of thing. You're like, I probably should have replaced this razor. And now here I am bleeding in my bathroom from the face for once. And that's, no one wants to go through that. So, hey, replace those razors. That's easier said than done with some of the big plastic razors sold at all these big stores behind plexiglass. You got the hassle of even buying these things, let alone getting them home. Ah. And then they're like, what? I don't know, like $1,000 a piece. No, what? They're super expensive. So, hey, what if you could only spend, about $5 a year on blades? What if you only had to spend that kind of money? The future is now, because now there's Henson Shaving. Henson makes a space-age, very fancy metal handle that takes, these non-proprietary blades. You just go get blades. They'll sell you blades. Henson will sell you the blades if you so desire. But you just get razor blades, like $5 a year for just some regular, double-edged razor blades. Just like, it's very easy. And then you can replace those things whenever you need to, because they're very inexpensive. Henson is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the International Space Station, and now they're taking that know-how and using it to manufacture sick razors. And they hold the blades in place super tight. One of the problems you get with razors is, if the blade is not being held tightly, you're in this situation where the blade wobbles a little bit, and that leads to nicks and cuts and scrapes and all that sort of stuff, and no one likes that. So there's precision in place here to hold those razors so tight. So the razors only extend 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. So you get a secure and stable blade and a vibration-free shave. There are built-in channels in the razor to evacuate hair and cream so it doesn't clog up on you, all of that sort of stuff. Henson Shaving wants to make the best razor and not necessarily the best razor business. So that means they're not selling you plastic. They're not selling you proprietary blades or subscriptions or, blades that, you need to get this year's blade because we don't make the blades for those. None of this obsolescence stuff that some of these other razor manufacturers may be getting into. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edged blades. That's that old school stuff right there. But the benefits of new school technology. So, bring your cost of ownership to, on blades down to like $5 a year. Make the investment in yourself. Make the investment in a Henson Shaving handle for these blades. Say no to subscriptions and say yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Jeff to pick the razor for you and use the code Jeff, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add the blades to your cart to get the deal. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff.
Okay, we're back. So video card out of the way, and now what? Monitors, right? We need new monitors. There's always something. I've been looking at this for a little bit, and they just opened up pre-orders on these yesterday. It seems like there has not been a monitor kind of like putting things together in like having it all, basically, the TV problem seems solved. Like these OLEDs are fucking great. These OLED TVs are outstanding for playing console games and all this other stuff, like the HDR stuff. They've got the right stuff in it. The OLED screen is fantastic. It has variable rate refresh and all that sort of stuff now too, and all that. But like the TV is usually not ideal for computer gaming because I don't want to. I don't want a 4K monitor. I don't feel like I need it. I feel like the performance required to hit performant frame rates in 4K are still just like, it still feels like a trade-off. And for me, the trade-off is I think 1440p is really that sweet spot where things look really sharp, really outstanding, and you can still get really solid frame rates. And so it's always been this case of just like, I don't want a 4K HDR monitor. Also because like these things, they would be like $3,000 or something. So LG, who made the television that seemed like the right TV, they are now taking pre-orders for a 27-inch 1440p OLED HDR G-Sync FreeSync monitor that runs at 240 hertz. And they want $1,000 for it, which is not cheap. But when I think about where this type of monitor technology was in terms of how expensive even just like HDR monitors on PC, like just the very idea of getting HDR on PC, like all of this sort of stuff felt like it was like $3,000 like 6 months ago. And so I have not been out there comparing prices on monitors to a great degree, but it felt like every time I was like, man, there's some fucking variable rate refresh monitor out there, 1440. Like, where are we at with OLED monitors? Why don't we have good OLED monitors? What the hell is going on? And every time I looked, it'd be like, oh, we got an OLED monitor. It's 4K. It's fucking $3,000. And it's like 35 inches. I'm like, dog, that's a television. Get the fuck out of here with that. That's a goddamn TV. Don't lie to me. And so this feels like the exact, like it is restraint on the resolution because it's not a 4K monitor. It's QHD, which is 1440. It has HDR10, 240 hertz, all this sort of stuff. Like this all sounds like a pretty good goddamn monitor. And it's out in a few weeks. They're taking pre-orders on it. And I may give this a look because I need to this monitor here, this old 30-inch Dell that I've got here is big and hot and old, and the color on it is not great. And I actually could use it out in the garage where I've got another PC out there that I want to set up for doing garage streams and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be me throwing this monitor away. I may give this other monitor a look. I may give this LG a look. I think I'm going to give this LG a look. And I'll be able to tell you about it in a few weeks when it comes out. Because that, again, like OLED, HDR, 240 hertz, supports G-Sync and FreeSync. Like, okay. Like, that's all stuff that, like, I feel like every time I would look and go like, why aren't we there yet? The TVs are fucking awesome. How come we haven't done it in a reasonable size yet? It felt like every time I looked, it was like you were compromising on one of the things you were looking for, and the monitor was still fucking $3,000. I'm like, well, I'm definitely not paying $3,000 for a goddamn monitor. That's stupid. But $1,000. That's a little less stupid, right? Anyway, I don't know. I might give that a look, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know. That's exciting. I don't know. Like I'm excited about personal computer hardware in a way that I haven't been in a while. It's kind of cool. What else? So yeah, I don't know. We talked a little bit about Callisto Protocol being kind of disappointing on the tech front. Portal with RTX is kind of the other thing. I did play some of it. I guess I was expecting more. I don't know. Like, I did not play through all of Portal with that stuff turned on. And, I'm sure later when you get to darker areas and all that sort of stuff, it probably does start to look pretty cool. But out of the gate, it was not immediately impressive. But this is kind of the first demo of the RTX remix stuff, which, Marco in the chat has been fucking around with a little bit, but, people have started. So the RTX Remix software is not out yet. NVIDIA is going to put this out eventually for people to mess with. But people have taken the files out of the Portal install and used it for dark. Marco is saying in chat, I've forced Garfield to ray trace. Yeah, he was looking at saving Arlene. Garfield saving Arlene last night, and that was a pretty dark. It's a dark future. But people are taking like Max Payne and some other older games. I think what do they need to be like DX8 or DX9 games, and basically taking the files from this Portal install and using them on other games and just kind of like fucking around with it and seeing what works and getting to a place where like, oh hey, we've got ray tracing in Max Payne. We've got ray traced lighting. It looks crazy. And some of this other stuff that, you know, it's all kind of hacky. It's all kind of thrown together, but it's interesting. You know, it's at least neat to see it, I guess. And so I don't know where that's going to go when NVIDIA finally does release the software, if it will be more capable than what people are doing by just yanking the files out of the Portal directory and trying to make them work elsewhere. But I don't know. It is weird. It is when I saw the Garfield model show up in a chat window with no eyeballs last night, I knew we were on the right track as a people. Things are going to get very strange again. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how all that stuff shakes out in the end. I don't know. Why don't we get into some news, huh? The Game Awards were last week. Thanks, everybody. That's it. And yeah, and a bunch of games were announced, and some things won awards, and all of that sort of stuff. I am looking up the winners. I need to pull the winners of the Game Awards out of my email here. Here we go. Yes, here's the press release from the Game Awards. Game of the Year, Elden Ring. Best Game Direction, Elden Ring. Best Art Direction, Elden Ring. And then everything else went to God of War. Pretty much. No, I'm sorry. Best Role-Playing, Elden Ring. Best Action Adventure, God of War. Best Action, Bayonetta 3. Okay. What's the difference between Bayonetta 3 and God of War Ragnarok, really? That you would say would make one an action game and one an action adventure game? I'm waiting for your answer. No, it's yeah, environmental puzzles. Okay, that's something. Whatever. I don't want to derail this for another half hour, but like the genre stuff is just weird now. It has been for a long time, but now that every game has some kind of skill tree or some kind of progression system or something like that, we used to think about the difference between an action game and an action adventure game as an action adventure game tends to have menus and inventory or upgrade system, like something happening, whereas an action game is like, Mario runs and he jumps on people, and then you go to the next level and jump on some more people. And yeah. But Bayonetta 3 has stuff like, yeah, anyway. A lot of God of War Ragnarok. Christopher Judge won the Best Performance Award. That was the first big award given when the show started. I was there for the first, hour and a half, somewhere in there, of the show. And then I had to head home to kind of help, put kids to bed and stuff like that. I couldn't stick around, which is a shame because, I mainly went to catch up with some folks, and I saw a bunch of people, and I spoke with Phil Spencer about my garage very briefly because so many of you bugged him about it. He was like, "How's your garage?" I was like, "Jesus Christ." And yeah, so talked to him a little bit. Seems like he's doing well. And yeah, but the kind of the I'm going to run into everyone sort of thing happens after the show, so I wasn't around for that, unfortunately. But I did run into a bunch of people. Talked to this Dan Reichert guy for a while. This Jeff Bacalard dude, I don't know. Caught up with those fools. Best ongoing game went to Final Fantasy 14. Best indie went to Stray. Best debut indie went to Stray. I did not like Stray. Stray's the worst game I played all year. No, I found Stray to be very disappointing. And yeah, I guess I'm disappointed at the lack of Tunic in these awards overall, and the lack of Vampire Survivors and Arcade Paradise. But whatever. What are you gonna do? Gran Turismo takes best sports / racing, which that makes sense. I think I don't think GT7 is like an amazing video game, but like I also were there really any big standout sports games that need to win, or is it just 2K and EA pumping out the same yearly update sort of stuff? Like people seem mad about the same stuff they're always mad about with NBA 2K and all of that. So Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I think, makes sense for best family. Best multiplayer, Splatoon 3. I like Splatoon 3 just fine. Personally, I would take, I mean, especially if we were doing shooters, I would take Modern Warfare 2 over Splatoon 3 there. Content creator of the year is Ludwig, who we talked about briefly last week with all the Smash Brothers stuff. Ludwig is the guy who was putting on a $50,000 Smash Brothers tournament to kind of fill the void with all the chaos happening in that scene. I don't know if that ever, the Smash Brothers stuff, it led to a big long document from the guy who was getting called out, the CEO guy who was stepped down from his company, saying like, I've got the receipts. But then that just led to like, even the people he was praising, some of the people he praised in his video or in his article, his, big long post, came out and like talked shit about him afterwards. So it was just like, all right, I don't know what's going on there. This was the first year that the Game Awards did best adaptation, which is, like best TV show, comic book, whatever. Best, like, hey, we took a video game and made it into something else. Arcane League of Legends won that award. That seems like a good award to have because it seems like we're maybe getting some good ones of those from time to time, or certainly more of them with Halo and now the Sonic movies and all this other stuff. People seem to really like Arcane. People seem to really like the Cyberpunk thing too. Edge Runners, that was called. Valorant won best esports game, which, okay, I don't. I'm really good at continuing to forget that Valorant exists. Like, oh right, Valorant, yes, that's still a game, huh? Apparently, it's the game. Speaking of which, I guess the game of the Game Pass stuff for Riot Games hit today. And so you get access to all the characters in League and Valorant, I believe, if you're a Game Pass subscriber, that seems like a great deal for people who play those games. That'll probably do very well for Microsoft, if I had to guess. Because if you play those games, and a lot of people do, why wouldn't you sign up for that at that point? It's probably, that's like, unless you've already bought all those characters because you're that diehard of a player, like you are probably making money back on that immediately. It'd be stupid not to get it. Multiverses won best fighting, which as a judge for these, I had to fill out nominees and all this other stuff. So I had to spend a good long time looking at like what fighting games came out this year and all of that sort of stuff. And I would have put Rumblefish 2 in here, but it didn't come out until after the deadline. So stuff like King of Fighters came out on some platforms this year, and I forget what else. Actually, I have a list of some genre. Oh, it was like Persona 4 Arena Ultimax came out on some platforms this year. DNF Duel came out. There's King of Fighters 15, Capcom Fighting Collection, technically a fighting game. All that sort of stuff. It would have been nice to see Rift Tracks, the game, make it into Best Family or Jackbox Party Pack 9. That's a good Jackbox. It's a solid Jackbox. But, things happen. Marvel Snap won Best Mobile, which of course it was going to. Marvel Snap seems to have a grip on people in a way that almost seems alarming. The way I hear people talk about Marvel Snap sounds scary to me. But anyway, that was the award side of things. I generally think, like, when I look at this list, there's stuff that I personally look at and go like, I would have loved to have seen this go a different way. But I think that like this seems like a good representative list of the games that came out this year and all that sort of stuff. Like there's very little in here that I go like, what? Like that I feel like surprised by. Like this all lines up to me. On the announcement side of things, Supergiant's going to make Hades 2. Supergiant's going to make a sequel to Hades. and put it out in early access next year and kind of do something similar to what they did with the, Hades. Hades debuted on the Epic Game Store in early access state and had a lot of updates. And then I think they hit 1.0 when they went on to Steam, so like a year later, or were they still in early access for a while after that? They might have been in early access for a little while after that. That's a cool trailer that as you're watching it, you're like, wait, it's like, okay, the next game from Supergiant, and it hasn't sunk in. And it hasn't quite sunk in that you're like, this is a sequel to Hades. Like, you're looking at it and going like, the next Supergiant game looks Hades-like. And I'm sitting there thinking like, well, I guess a lot of their games have had a similar perspective. I mean, I'm sitting in the audience thinking about Bastion and going like, man, Bastion's a great game. Yeah, but it had kind of a similar camera angle. So, I guess, yeah, okay, the next Supergiant game has this same kind of camera angle and all this other stuff. Like, yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. And then as more and more, as characters keep talking and as there's more and more dialogue, I'm like, this dialogue sounds like it would be totally in step with what I think of as the Hades universe. Huh. Interesting. And but it still hasn't, there's still no thing that's like sunk in and been like, oh, they're going to make a sequel to Hades. So I'm still sitting there like, I wonder what this will be called anyway. It seems sort of like Hades. They're like Hades 2. They're like, yeah, okay, yeah, of course. I've seen some people say, and Rec Roulette's in the chat saying kind of bummed that they're doing another Hades over something new. The impression that I've always gotten from the folks at Supergiant is that they were always open to the idea of doing a sequel. There maybe was just always, the next idea maybe didn't fit, or, there was always like, but it never, I don't think it was ever a policy of theirs to be like, we're never going to make a sequel and we're going a different thing. So I could see, especially going through the process of the early access stuff and getting all that feedback by being in early access and all of that being like a motivating factor for them to be like, no, we want to immediately do more in this same vein. And I think the other thing is that Hades, I don't know this. I don't know sales wise. I assume Hades is their best-selling game. I assume it kind of has to be because of how everywhere that game was and all of that sort of stuff. Like I think all of their stuff has done quite well, but I imagine Hades has to have been probably their most popular game across the board, not just sales, but in terms of just like the cosplay, the community involvement, the level to which people got into the different characters, how horny people got for the characters in Hades. Totally understandable. And all of that sort of stuff. Like I could see coming out of the Hades experience and thinking like, hey, we've still got a lot of ideas that don't make a lot of sense to do in the context of the game that we've made, but also this style, this universe, what have you. Like I could see them very much being interested in diving back into aspects of that and taking the things that they've learned over the course of Hades 1 and kind of having those in their pocket for, the early days of Hades 2 and seeing where the feedback takes them from there. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really interesting move on their part, and I'm super excited to see it. That's coming out next year, and yeah, and it reminded me that I don't think I've talked to Greg since the fucking pandemic started. Like it was one of those reminders of just like, man, when the pandemic started and all this other stuff, like it just really got me thinking about the past few years here and just like, I don't know, my daughter was in a leg brace when the pandemic started and we were worried that we were worried that she was going to need surgery and all of this sort of stuff. And yeah, it was a reminder, like, I gotta reach out to some folks. Like I just, these last few years just being very focused on, starting a family and all that sort of stuff. It's been great. And I just realized like, oh man, there's like so many people that I just haven't heard from in years and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, let's see here. Final Fantasy 16 got a release date of June 2023. I'm looking at IGN's list of here's everything that was announced at the Game Awards. And that looks okay. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I have a strong opinion on Final Fantasy 16. I think it looks all right. But I feel like a lot of Final Fantasies have looked all right, and I've been like, you know, not super into the games when they come out. It's been a lot of like, oh man, when this one comes out, I'm going to give this one a shot. And then I'd play it and go like, yeah, I'm still not, whatever. Armored Core 6 finally got announced. Fires of Rubicon, which is a great subtitle. That'll be out next year. They have a trailer of robots fighting each other. Mechs, I guess sorry. Mechs. That kind of comes in conjunction with some additional, because I think that trailer ends with a shot of a robot wearing a big backpack, and I think it led to people go like, oh, is this going to be a Souls game but with mechs? Because that would be awesome. And that has led to an IGN interview with Miyazaki, where I'm looking at Video Games Chronicles recap of that. That Miyazaki's not been making a conscious effort to try to direct Armored Core 6 towards more of that Soulsborne type of gameplay. And that, let's see here. Boss battles are the highlight of the game in this title. The essence of the battles, in which the player reads the enemy's moves and then plays games with them, is of course provided, as is typical of From Software. In this title, both the enemy and your own machine are aggressive and violent in their attacks. We are developing the game so that players can enjoy the dynamic and intense boss battles that only mechas can offer, along with the unique aspects of Armored Core, such as how to assemble the right parts to take on the strongest enemies. Yeah, and there's not a ton of detail out there. There's some stuff from a survey, so people knew Armored Core was coming, I think, but this is the kind of full confirmation of that. It's a really cool looking trailer. I just, we'll see. You know what? I was going to say the thing you need to know is that Armored Core was always a highly specific thing that for the people who were into it, they were way into it. And for everyone else, it was just too much. Whether it was too many menus or just like once you get into the action never felt right or something. I think I wanted to love Armored Core multiple times over the years. And I do love the name Armored Core for Answer, which is just a great nonsense subtitle. But gosh, those games have always looked cool, and I have never ever been able to enjoy a single one of them. And that said, we all said the same thing about Kingsfield, and at the outset, everyone said that about Demon's Souls. So we'll see. It's we talk about it off and on, that it really feels like the audience, the people out there buying and playing games, it feels like their horizons have been broadened over the past 10 years, 20 years. It really feels like there's just been more acceptance of a wider range of games in different styles and formats and all of this sort of stuff. It's like we talk about the way that like anime feels so much more mainstream now and enjoyed by a wider range of people than it was in the 90s. Some of that's because of, how much more accessible it's become, and in terms of like, you don't have to hunt down Miami Mike and fucking get his tapes or whatever. But like, it feels like there's an audience for a wider array of games than there used to be. And I think Armored Core is exactly the sort of game that can strongly benefit from the way that people enjoy games these days. Like I feel like there's probably never been a better time to announce and put out an Armored Core game, whether it's in the continued hotness of the From Software brand, or it's just people's just general willingness to go along for the ride on some of these things that, you know, back when Armored Core was coming out in I was like 2012 was the last one or whatever. You know, those games just came out and you just wouldn't, you'd barely even hear, there'd be like one person you would hear talking about it and they would be insane for it. And you'd be like, you're insane. And they'd be like, leave me alone. I'm customizing mechs over here. And yeah, I don't know. It feels like that this is poised to, well, whatever, hey, the next game from Software might be big. The next game from Miyazaki, people might want to play it. Like, of course, duh. But, if you had told me back when these games were coming out, they're like, hey man, when we get to 2023, Armored Core is going to be one of the most anticipated titles of the year, I would have said, ha! Oh! Sure, man. Yes, of course it is. Yes. The kids are going to love Armored Core in the future. Right. But here we are. It's even as someone who was never really super into those games, I think it's fucking rad that that's a thing that can come along, get announced, and people can lose their mind over it. Armored Core. People are losing their mind over Armored Core. That's great. Ken Levine's next game finally surfaced. It's called Judas. It sure looks like a BioShock. It is apparently set in space. Not a lot in the press release. It says, you are the mysterious and troubled Judas. Your only hope for survival is to make or break alliances with your worst enemies. Will you work together to fix what you broke, or will you leave it to burn? I'm a leave it to burn kind of guy, personally. Gosh, the whole ghost story, the whole what is Ken Levine doing next thing? I feel like that saga has been so weird. And they talked about narrative and having all these different experiments they were doing that were like, how are we going to tell stories differently in these games down the line, and what's it going to take to get there? And it sounded like that they just were doing a ton of prototyping and a lot of different work around this idea of like narrative Legos or whatever you want to call it. I think that's the phrase that they used. To try to have like different style of storytelling in these games. But you look at it and you're like, that sure looks like a BioShock. But if the story aspect of it is really dramatically more open-ended than BioShock or BioShock Infinite ever were, that's an idea with potential still. It's just weird. And I wonder if that stuff is still in there, because that's not necessarily something they're highlighting as part of this initial announcement. They're not like, hey, it's going to have this. I think Keeley had a little, when he was introducing the clip, I think he had a little like, hey, I played this for hours, and it's, the narrative, there was kind of a little bit of lip service given to that aspect of the game. So I assume that is still the case, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. That's something that's incredibly hard to show, especially in your reveal trailer. So down the line is when you have your like, hey, we're showing the same scene play out 9 different ways, depending on, did you hit the guy with the wrench or did you give him the book? I hope it's more than that. I hope that the choices you make and the way that this story gets told is a little more detailed than you hit him with the wrench or you gave him the book or something, or whatever. That would be. Oh no, now I'm the skeleton on the toilet. Hideo Kojima's next game was announced. It is the sequel to Death Stranding. It is apparently not officially called Death Stranding 2. It is referred to as DS2 in the trailer. And Death Stranding 2 at times was said aloud, but if you go look at their website or their YouTube version of the trailer, it does acknowledge that it's a working title. Sometimes there are things that happen in games, in trailers, that kind of initially just make me think like, this is not something I feel like I need to see. This is not something that inspires a pathos or inspires an emotional reaction that then makes me want to play the game. And for me, it was a young child flies out of a carrier and ends up on the ground hurt, and then maybe ends up dead or whatever the fuck happens in that trailer. It's not really, yeah, I don't know. Having kids that are right around that age, there was definitely just like fuck this. Like, fuck off with this. Yeah, Dirty Sprite 2. Hideo Kojima's Dirty Sprite 2 is gonna fucking change the fucking game. You don't even know. We'll see what they're gonna make here. There's a big fucking hovering mech ship that says Drawbridge on it, and Sam Bridges. Almost said Sam Fisher. Sam Bridges is back, and he's older now. I don't know. Death Stranding, I did not like it. I did not especially like the story of it. I did not especially care for. I liked the greatest part of Death Stranding are the little tones when people call you. I wanted those as text message noises, but then I didn't end up using them because I didn't like Death Stranding enough. And I felt like, well, these are really good little noises, but also they make me think of Death Stranding, and I don't like that game. So I don't feel okay. Also, everyone's phone is on silent now anyway, so who cares? But the little like all those noises were outstanding. The little fucking Austin Powers glove box video call tones in that game were top fucking notch. But yeah, I don't know. There's a little unicycle thing going, and yeah, all that sort of stuff. And I guess the thing I liked second most in Death Stranding is your ability to hammer on the like button fast to give multiple likes. And so I think there are things about the structure of that game in terms of players creating player-created structures and then other players seeing those structures and being able to use them. And like the aspects on the tech end of that, I think, are really interesting. And we haven't really seen a lot of games build off of that concept. People have said, this was not my idea, but I think someone in chat a few weeks ago said that Sonic Frontiers would have been great if it had like a park creator in it, and then other players created rails and stuff showed up in your game, which is perfect because there's so much empty nothing in Sonic Frontiers that they could really benefit from having a bunch of stuff in there. That would be killer. And yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Death Stranding 2. He also acknowledged that after the pandemic started, he rewrote the entire game from scratch because, all the people accused him of predicting the future in that game and all this other stuff. So like the trailer is interesting because it's like, it's just a bunch of bad shit happening, which is actually Death Stranding 1 is really just a series of bad things happening, but it's a bunch of bad things happening, and then like the phrase of just like, what is it? I'm gonna misquote it here, but it's like, should we have connected? Basically, like, okay, Sam, you connected the world, but maybe that was a bad idea. Which you could argue, I think that actually is a very now kind of like, as people really hem and haw about the value of social media as, you know, Twitter continues to deteriorate and all that sort of stuff. Like, you know, the all of that sort of stuff is, that seems very now as well. Idris Elba is in the Cyberpunk expansion. There's a new Star Wars Jedi Survivor trailer. They also confirmed a March release for that, but that happened a while back. Or like it leaked a little bit before that, I guess, actually. Similarly leaking was the release date for Street Fighter 6. That'll be out June 2nd, which I think was later than any of us were anticipating. And they announced 3 different versions of that and weird expensive collector's editions and all that sort of stuff. And Street Fighter 6 continues to look awesome. They showed a bunch of weird mini games and the kind of world tour mode, like where you have your like created character that will learn moves like dragon punches and stuff. And so you'll have just like these regular looking guys fighting, which is great. That's it reminds me of Street Fighter EX3, which had a similar, it had 2 characters in it that I think you would map moves onto as you played through the story mode. And it was cool. So I always like that concept, and it's cool that it's showing up in there. Street Fighter 6 just continues to look like a game where the people making it really understand that there's an opportunity to make things that will help it appeal to a wider audience than just the fighting game community. And all that seems so smart. Everything they're showing, everything they're doing with different control schemes, like all of the different aspects of that game feel so smart compared to their attitude around Street Fighter 5. And so I don't know, I'm very excited about Street Fighter 6. You were asking me what is my most anticipated game for 2023. It is almost certainly Street Fighter 6. Diablo 4 sounds cool. I ended up running into some folks that had played some of it when I was down there at the Game Awards, and it was described to me as like, yeah, it's Diablo and it's awesome. So like, cool, man. I am in the mood for some more Diablo. It's something that a lot of other action RPGs, obviously there are a lot of games that are like Diablo that come out all the time, and you know, Path of Exile is right there. It still exists. But none of those games have done it to me the way actual real Diablo has. And I don't know why that is. I'm not like deep into the Diablo lore beyond, you know, Deckard Cain saying, you know, stay a while, you know, like all his stuff. I'm not that into the devil. They showed some Tekken 8. So I guess, yeah, actually I am way into the devil. The devil gene. Tekken 8 looks good. I don't know. Like, you know, they showed kind of a story sequence. They're trying to say that this was like an engine or game, you know, whatever it is. And they showed a handful of new characters that, you know, hadn't been shown before in the trailer. And, you know, this just has a generic 2023 date. So I assume that means later in the year, holiday maybe, but we'll see. Horizon Forbidden West expansion DLC was announced. Burning Shores will be out in April, only on PS5. Crash Team Rumble is a 4v4 multiplayer Crash game. This appears, you know, some people are saying that this is a revamped version of the Wumpa League game that got leaked not that long ago, and, you know, whatever. This was this segment having a man in a Crash Bandicoot costume drop from the ceiling and try to ham it up for a bit was a rough segment. Let's just leave it at that. Earthblade, the next game from Extremely OK, developer of Celeste from Matty Thorson, was shown. Looks good. Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon, which is a spin-off that'll be out in March, which is pretty fast turnaround for another Bayonetta game. My wife texted me and said, hey, a friend of mine said there was a new Bayonetta game announced. I said, yeah, it's an origin story. Here's the trailer. And she watched it and just went, ugh. Just texted back, ugh. So not a lot of interest from the Bayonetta fan of the house on that one. She is making her way through Bayonetta 3 and enjoying it just well enough, I would say. Knowing what and hopefully she won't listen to this episode of the show. But knowing what I know about the storyline of Bayonetta 3, I think she will like it when all is said and done. I think she will like where that story goes. Michael Madsen is back in video game form. Not since Yakuza.
What fun.
Have we been inundated with this much Michael Madsen in video games? This game, he was in, as someone in chat, Arbitrary Water in chat is saying he was in Dishonored. Okay. Sure. What fun. 505 is publishing this game. I believe the developer's out of the Czech Republic. When I went and looked it up the other day, this is a star-studded cast of what appears to be what they are describing as a stealth action first-person shooter set in a fictional 90s Florida. And it's starring Michael Madsen. Also in the cast, Chuck Norris, Danny Glover, Kim Basinger, Danny Trejo, and Vanilla Ice. This game is called Crime Boss. And it has a subtitle. It's Crime Boss, Rocky City. And I cannot believe that it took us until 2022/2023 to get to a point where they are making a game and calling it Crime Boss. That hasn't been taken by a BBS door game or a mobile, like an idle game or idle clicker, or the very notion that like they couldn't come up with anything better or didn't have to come up with anything better, that Crime Boss was just available, blows me away. I don't know what to make of this game. It looks like a whole bunch of nonsense to me, but stealth action FPS, it's like the sort of thing where you, like with the cast, you would almost expect it to be a third-person game of some kind, so that you're always looking at some sort of on-screen representation of Michael Madsen or whatever. I assume the player plays as Michael Madsen. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this. It has a very stylized look to it, and they're going for it on the casting, and we'll see how that works out for them. We got a PC release date for Last of Us Part 1. We already mentioned that Returnal was announced for PC. That'll come out early 2023. Some kid got detained by the cops for being a dumbass. There was a new Transformers game announced, and they didn't show very many Transformers in the trailer for it. It is a 1 to 4 player online co-op action game, I guess, by Splash Damage of all people, called Transformers Reactivate. I don't really know what to make of that. The trailer is so not focused on Transformers, not focused on here's Optimus Prime saying a thing, which is probably, it's good that it's different than the typical kind of, what you expect out of a Transformers announce is just like, all right, we get Peter Cullen. Can we just play old audio? We have to play. All right. Just get him to say till all are one or something. Something like that. And so it's not, it doesn't just seem like it's playing off of all of that same stuff. But I guess like the thing is, I don't know what it's playing off of really. So, yeah, I don't know. It left me intrigued because Splash Damage has made some interesting games in the past, some interesting online games, and we'll see what this thing ends up being. But I don't have a good sense of like Do I play as humans and the Transformers are with me? Am I a human that has been embedded? There's kind of a RoboCop sort of thing in the trailer going on where it's like, you know, engineers and scientists looking in the eyes of the thing, and where they're like, you know, they're building RoboCop and all that sort of stuff in the movie. And it's shot like that, where it's like, oh, they're trying to get the Transformer to reactivate. Yeah. And then, you know, there's a shot where it kind of looks down and you see the robot hands and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know what to make of that. Remnant 2 got announced. There's a handful of other things. Vampire Survivors came to phones. It's totally free. Man, what a cool. Dead Cells returned to Castlevania. They're making Castlevania themed DLC for Dead Cells. It has a bunch of Castlevania music in it, both original and remixed. It has they've got a list here. 14 weapons, 2 new biomes, a new storyline, 3 bosses, and 20 outfits. That is all kind of Castlevania themed, which is such a fucking great idea. Holy shit, what a great idea. You know, they showed a Destiny trailer. There's a handful of things in addition to that, but that's kind of that seems like the big stuff from the Game Awards. People picked up on Microsoft not being there with anything, and we're like, what's up with that? I don't know. That, to me, that seemed pretty self-explanatory to me as to why Microsoft wouldn't necessarily have a bunch of big announcements in the middle of this thing. And to me, that would be like, well, they've already announced a bunch of games that they haven't shown at all, or they've shown a lot of and then delayed, or, you know, they're in a mode now where they just need to put games out and stop telling us about these games. I don't think you should put out another Redfall trailer right now. You know, you should put out Redfall and let the game do the talking. Or, Forza or something. Like, they haven't really shown much of Forza, but like, I think Microsoft is in that stage of like, you have been talking a lot and now you need to put up by shipping the games. Or, you know, they could kind of show more Fable, or, you know, there's like little bits and pieces of stuff they could have shown, but maybe that stuff's super far off. Maybe that stuff's like not going super well. Who knows? They said recently that Perfect Dark was going well, but so I thought maybe there was some outside chance of like, oh, maybe Perfect Dark gets shown here or something like that. But like, look, they're not going to do another Starfield trailer here. They don't need to do one. Also, like, people are already excited enough for it. Do one closer to launch and go with it. I don't think they needed to have much of anything here other than as kind of a show of force of like, yeah, no, we're still, but like, it was also the same day that the US government said, hey, we think we're going to sue to block your thing. That said, I ran into some folks, like I said, from Microsoft. They all seemed in good spirits, and they seemed like, oh yeah, this is, they're going through it. They're figuring that stuff out. And it just, I don't know. I did not get the impression from them that they were like sweating it. But Aaron Greenberg of Xbox did respond to people saying like, hey, how come you didn't have anything there? He did get on Twitter and say, we have a lot planned to show and share about an incredibly exciting year ahead for 2023. Appreciate folks are eager to learn and see more. Timing is always key, but don't worry, you will not have to wait too long for what's next from us. So, yeah, makes it sound like that they will have some more detail out there about some of their upcoming games. And I characterized your interest in the Bayonetta prequel as ugh. Would you say that's right? No, I mean the one they just announced. Oh. Yeah, no, she's not interested. She reiterated her ugh. So anyway, I don't know. Microsoft is the way I've always put it is Microsoft feels like it's been trying to line up all these dominoes for the last 5 years or so. And there was one meeting. I remember coming out of a meeting. This is like the middle of the Xbox One. It's when they're getting ready to do more. Well, this isn't the middle of the Xbox. This is. You know, we're meeting with them talking about emulation technology of all things, and I'm talking to an engineer about, you know, how the things that they did to make Xbox 360 and original Xbox games and all that sort of stuff run on the Xbox One, and some of their plans there for some of that stuff. And it was this interesting feeling of like, I left that meeting feeling like, oh man, yeah, okay. Like they're trying to get it all. They're trying to get everything in a row. They're trying to get everything aligned. And it really felt like, oh yeah, okay, they're in like kind of weird. They're in a weird space. They're in weird waters right now. Like the Xbox One did not, you know, like practically tanked. That's a strong term, but it was not super competitive in the marketplace. People talked a bunch of shit about it. It eventually led to the Xbox One X. And so a lot of those conversations were around like, okay, how can we, you know, kind of alluding to the idea that they could have upgraded hardware, they could have a lot of this different stuff and still emulate this and still, you know, do the things they needed to do to kind of have a wide range of backwards compatibility options across different styles of hardware. And at the time, it got me thinking like, man, I wonder if they'll put Xbox 360 games onto PC, or, you know, because it really felt like that they were just trying to get that, the story of their legacy kind of in a row of just like, okay, we need to find a way to, and you know, obviously business gets in the way. You can't go and resell every single old game, and all this sort of stuff. But it was them. I got the impression from that one meeting that like, and I believe this may have been early in kind of Phil Spencer's, you know, reign, if you want to call it that, you know, is, you know, when he kind of ascended through the organization and kind of became the guy, that there was sort of that feeling of like, we need to really sit down and really think about all of this stuff right now and unfuck as much of it as we can. You know, that because they got handed a bad situation, and many of those people were there for that bad situation, but you know, they didn't get to call all the shots. You know, Matrick got to call a lot of the shots. And so, you know, when you think about the way Microsoft behaved around the early days of Xbox One, you know, late Xbox 360 was a really arrogant Microsoft, and the decisions they made then at the end of the Xbox 360, as they started to move into the Xbox One generation, cost them dearly. And so, you know, the heads roll, people leave, whatever you want to call it. Phil gets the chair, and then, but I really got the impression, like at that moment, it really became clear to me of just like, man, they are up against it, and they're in the middle of a generation. You know, there are still years left of Xbox One, but they have to sit here and go like, okay, we need to start unfucking this right now. And then when, you know, it almost felt like, you know, when the Xbox One got cut off early in favor of the Xbox 360, like it was just like, maybe they cut that off a year early to get the 360 out the door. And you were kind of like, whoa, that seems a little fast. And wow, Xbox software is not on shelves anywhere anymore. Like it was a really fast transition. They couldn't do that again. Out of the Xbox One was still too new, you know, so you can sit down and go like, okay, well, we're going to try to cook up a more powerful version of this hardware to try to get this story right. And so that, you know, you get them working on Scorpio and all this other stuff, but like they can't just go out and fucking say, all right, we're done with Xbox One and here's what's next. And we'll come out with a whole new platform. Besides, that didn't really fit into their whole thing because they were working on this idea of backwards compatibility. And so I left that with the idea of not only are they thinking about different ways to run Xbox 360 games and blah, 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 blah. This is before they'd really even started talking about any of the cloud shit, because that just didn't seem viable at the time. But it was like, okay, can we make these games run better on updated hardware? Can we, you know, like going forward, what can we do about that type of backwards compatibility? And so it was really this feeling of just like, man, I've left the feeling like they really understand exactly the situation that they're in. And boy, oh boy, are they in some trouble in the gaming area. Obviously, and Small Rewarder on the Discord is posting market caps for the different companies. Of course, Microsoft is still fucking Microsoft. But Microsoft is Microsoft because they don't sit there and fucking throw money away on shit. And it led to, remember, a lot of speculation that they were just going to spin off the gaming brand and just sell it off completely. Just get rid of Xbox. Like, hey, we fucked this up so bad. We got to get it out of here. Like, there was a lot of call there for a bit of like, they've got to get rid of the Xbox brand. They've got to spin it out, sell it off, get it rid of it. It is dragging them down. All this other, so it's losing too much money. Like all this other stuff at the time. And, you know, that they, I think instead said like, hey, no, we really care about gaming. We think it's a fight worth fighting and a fight worth winning and all this other stuff. And I don't think they're not winning. That's the thing. Is like that meeting was years ago and you see it kind of lay out in front of you. You're like, okay, so now a lot of the moves they make seem to make sense in terms of like building their version of the gaming industry, right? Where they go like, okay, well, we're Microsoft, so we can figure out this cloud technology stuff, but we still have a game, you know, it's not like Stadia. They already have a gaming brand that they can ground it in so that it makes sense, so that it's additive to an existing thing that people already seem to like. And then they can go with Game Pass and say like, okay, we're going to throw money at this and try to do a subscription service. We can try to make this work and all of this other stuff. The hardware is plenty powerful, but they're still not the worldwide brand that PlayStation is. Xbox is great in America and, you know, different parts of the world and stuff like that. But like Sony, I would be curious to see the install base numbers for like what the UK looks like these days. But Sony was always a big stronghold there in the UK. Dating back to PlayStation 1 and all that sort of stuff. And you're seeing some of that now. Like the stuff right now reminds me of with the EU kind of coming out of the woodwork in the UK about all the competition stuff over the Activision buyout. Just reminds me of just like, oh yeah, like they love PlayStation over there. And yeah, I don't know. It's so it feels like that they put out their roadmap, that they figured out, okay, this is the direction we need to head in, kind of no matter what the rest of the industry is doing. And they're going in these directions. And you look at it and go like, this is all smart stuff. Cloud gaming, the Game Pass stuff. Like, again, if you look at the idea of we want to get as many people as possible able to play these games, so that these games can sell more copies, so that Game Pass can have more subscribers, whatever the you know, the metric ends up being. That the idea of like hardware itself is something that kind of holds them back. And so that you've seen that impact their PC strategy, all of this other stuff. But like, they always feel like they're just like 3 moves away from getting it all in line. And then, oh, right, this game got pushed back. Oh, right. Oh, this game, Halo came out and it's been a shit show. That's maybe, you know, I liked Halo Infinite a lot. But like people are mad about it. You know, it's not the good feel good moment that like you think Halo should be. It did not feel like something that was getting them back on track and like, yeah, Microsoft's getting it done. Look at them. Nope. Halo came out and was like divisive and causing a lot of problems. It still needs work. All of this other stuff, as fun as it can be, that almost makes it worse, right? You're like, man, there's an amazing game in here. I had great fun with that game. They just need to make an infinite amount more of it now, forever. And that didn't happen. And then it's not happening fast enough and all of that sort of stuff. You know, so it's just like their pipeline of first party, you know, like the Sony story gets a lot easier, right? Because they can be like, look at all these prestigious games we've got. We got God of War, we got Horizon, we're working on a VR headset. You know, we got Returnal, you know, for more of an arcadey kind of feel. We bought Bungie. We want to have 10 live games in the pipeline, all this other. So, you know, that's them recognizing their weakness That's Sony recognizing that they maybe put a little too much into these kind of one-off single player experiences that cannot be monetized for years to come. And they're like, shit, man, we should figure that out. And so they are trying to figure that out. And then on the Microsoft side, it's just like, it's that sort of situation where you look at the Microsoft stuff and you're like, man, they cannot catch a fucking break. Everything just like, every game gets delayed. Games come out and they're not where they need to be. Like all this sort of stuff. You know, now they've got the Bethesda stuff in the pipeline. Who knows how that stuff will go, right? Like Starfield, people are very excited about it. I'm sure it will drive Game Pass subscriptions and all of that sort of stuff. But what if it comes out and it's as broken as fucking Fallout 4 was or more? Are people going to like cancel their Game Pass trials after 1 month because they're just like, yeah, this is fucking cool, but it's like, it's fucked. I don't know, whatever. You know, like what does that do to them? You could argue it does nothing to them because Fallout 4 sold incredibly well. And, you know, at the end of the day, people don't actually care if their games are broken, apparently, which is really something else. But hey, I think that, like, when I look at Microsoft, you see like, okay, like they get it. They seem to understand where they need to go, but they just keep getting into these situations where things just don't line up the way you think they're gonna. And a game comes out sideways, or a game gets delayed, or they announce a game way too early, and then like, shit, man, now we have to talk about this for another year and a half with no more trailers. Like where's Fable? Like we were hearing rumors of Fable in 2019? And they put out like a trailer that was basically like a tone piece and not much else. Like there's just a lot of situations like that they keep running into. And you wonder if they'll ever get there. I don't know. Like I used to think like, oh, you know, eventually it'll line up for them and they'll catch a break and get some games out the door and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I used to always think that like, you know, this was in the kind of the early 2000s at GameSpot. It always felt like we were like one change away from everything being easy and great and us just like nonstop kicking ass without a lot of friction or a lot of other stuff. Sometimes that was like, oh, there's a person here that is in the way, or there's a process that's in the way, or if we could just get this change. And the thing that I realized is that, yeah, you know, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something else next. It's never going to be exactly the way you want it to be. And so like, I think about that a lot when I think about Microsoft, because it's just like they have been up against it for so long and trying to make it happen. And I think that's when you get to the Activision purchase and stuff like that. I think that makes a ton of sense for them. The Bethesda acquisition made sense. I think, you know, acquiring Activision helps them. You know, they've kind of tried to reiterate that like, hey, we really care about mobile. We really want to have a better presence on mobile. And so the Activision purchase is really, you know, a lot of that is driven by Call of Duty Mobile and by Candy Crush and stuff like that. And it makes sense when you look at stuff like Gears Pop. Like clearly they have tried to have a mobile strategy. What's the best mobile Microsoft game? It's probably Minecraft, I guess. But actually my answer was going to be Wordament, which is an awesome little word game that Microsoft put out, and you can get achievements in an iOS game. So I don't know. So yeah, they probably need more in the mobile space as well, for as much as everyone's very focused on Call of Duty and all that sort of stuff. So what are they? I mean, they have another 6 months. I think when they announced the buyout that they thought it would take like a year and a half or something like that, right? So are we at a point now where it's probably like supposed to be April or May or June or something like? I'd have to go back and look at the math on that, but you know, yeah, June. So, you know, if they got 6 months to clear all these lawsuits and all this other stuff, they'll probably get there. Let's take one more break here, and we'll come back and talk more about the news. Which one did where are we going? Here. Be right back. Winter is here, and that means nighttime temperatures are all over the place in this house. You know, it's getting down into the 40s outside, and I sleep relatively close to a window.
And so you end up in a situation where you're like, hey, it's kind of cold. And so what do? You turn on the heater. And then the heater comes on, and suddenly it's like, oh, I'm dying. It's 1 billion degrees in this room. I can't. It's impossible to find the right temperature when you sleep sometimes. That's why Miracle Brand's silver-infused bed sheets, which were inspired by NASA, might be for you. Because they can help you stay at the perfect temperature all night long. And having the wrong temperature at night when you sleep can have a really nasty impact on your sleep quality. You wake up too hot, you wake up too cold, all this other stuff. Check out Miracle Brand's bed sheets. These fabrics, again, inspired by NASA, are temperature regulating. So you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. How do they do it? Well, they're infused with silver. Yeah, silver. So not only are they temperature regulating, but also they prevent 99.9% of bacterial growth, which leaves them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. That's less sheet stink. That's maybe you don't need to wash them quite as often as some of your other sheets, which is nice and convenient and can save you some money, washing machine loads and soaps and all that other stuff. It makes a perfect gift for your spouse, friends, or family who doesn't want better sleep and luxurious feeling bed sheets. And hey, this deal that we're going to lay on you right here also comes with 3 free towels. That's right. 3 free towels. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog up your pores, fewer breakouts for other skin problems. But hey, you also get 3 free towels. Go to trymiracle.com/Jeff to try it today or gift it to someone special this holiday season. Here's a special deal for you. Save over 40% and be sure to use the promo code Jeff at checkout to save even more and get 3 free towels. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Brand. Go to trymiracle.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Jeff to treat yourself, a friend, or a loved one this holiday season. And thanks to Miracle Brand for sponsoring the episode.
All right, we're back. What else is going on in the news? We kind of touched on the FTC stuff. There's been little bits and pieces coming out of this that, apparently alongside the offer to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years, part of that was details about maybe putting the game onto PlayStation Plus, which, that's not a new part of the offer. That's just, I think, new to us in a public sense that had not necessarily been revealed as a result of the Federal Trade Commission launching a lawsuit and attempting to get in the way of this Microsoft Activision merger. Microsoft has kind of given their statement as a result of that. This is comes from Video Games Chronicle. We continue to believe that this deal will expand competition and create more opportunities for gamers and game developers. We have been committed since day one to addressing competition concerns, including by offering earlier this week proposed concessions to the FTC. While we believed in giving peace a chance, we have complete confidence in our case and welcome the opportunity to present our case in court. Yeah, I don't think that any of this sounds surprising. The Biden administration has been looking at a lot of mergers more closely for these kind of anti-competition and monopoly sort of situations. And so it's not a shock that this is kind of going this way. And it actually is a good thing, I think, that the government is looking at a lot of these mergers and stuff like that, because, we've seen so much consolidation in business in ways that just, we talk about it with media all the time, the Warner Brothers Discovery thing. And, people are so up in arms and mad about, content being pulled off of HBO Max and all this other stuff. And, the way this kind of, you want to have some kind of oversight over all these company mergers to make sure that, you know, people point to the hospital industry a lot recently too, in terms of the consolidation over there and how that has just led to worse healthcare, for all that sort of stuff. Now, the FTC is probably not going to block this from happening. And this one is one of those ones you go like, this is not the one you need to try to stop. Like when you look at the video game space and all of this sort of stuff, you're like, no, this is not going to create a monopoly. Microsoft owning Activision, like, oh man, they're the only people that can put out barnstorming. You know, like that's not going to lead to a situation where Microsoft suddenly has a stranglehold in the game business. It's stupid. But, you know, still nice to at least think that the government is trying to have some kind of oversight over this stuff and make sure that that these mergers are on the up and up. But again, they are barking up the wrong tree with this one. I think as someone who has spent a long time looking at the video game industry, and you look at the exclusive policies in place and how games get kept off other platforms, stuff that Sony freely engages in while they make a lot of complaints about competition to the FTC, to these bodies in the UK and all this other stuff. Like, yeah, it's going to be fine if this deal goes through. This just seems like Sony trying to get in the way as much as they can, and kind of be dicks about it, which I guess that's competition or whatever, right? But nothing about this situation seems like it will create a monopoly. If anything, you know, because even if it doesn't sell necessarily in terms of numbers, you know, there was a report saying that Call of Duty surpassed Elden Ring as the number one selling game of the year, which is pretty unsurprising. But there are plenty of ways to compete with Call of Duty. You could make the argument, and Sony certainly has tried to make the argument by saying that Battlefield ain't shit. I think that's the official quote that's in their statement. It's like, Battlefield ain't shit. But no, the Battlefield franchise you would like to think would get its fucking ass back on track, especially after, well, you know, I would say especially after this last one, but honestly, we said that the last time they put one of these out. But also, Sony just bought Bungie, the makers of Halo, the makers of Destiny, you know, and the makers of world-class shooters. So they've got teams in their back pocket that have made amazing world-class games that are in the same genre as Call of Duty. They own the Killzone IP, which they could always, you know, people would laugh or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, Killzone's going to compete with Call of Duty, but like, it could. If they made one good enough. What is Call of Duty other than a long-running brand name? It has had some shit years. You know? Like, it's not infallible. Like, it sold okay in those years, but if you came along with something better, I don't think people are so long-term loyal to Call of Duty that there's never going to be another competitive first-person shooter ever again. That's just not how it works. Like, franchises fall off. They are not dominant forever. They eventually fucking settle into a space where, you know, hey, competitors come along or whatever, and things happen. So I don't know. The idea that like there's some kind of monopoly, whatever. We've talked about this before. I don't even. But the idea that Microsoft owning Call of Duty would create some kind of monopoly, even though again they have stated on multiple occasions that they are still looking to keep that game on all the platforms it's on today. So it's kind of a moot point anyway. Whatever. It'll go through its fucking, it'll wind its way through the process, and I think it will emerge on the other end just fine. Will they have to make some concessions along the way? Perhaps, but I don't envision that being a huge holdup. There's another little bit on this story. So, you know, part of this was Microsoft pledged to put Call of Duty on the Nintendo Switch for 10 years. As a part of just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do these deals with everybody, but Sony, and Sony's going to be the one left going like, no, which I think is a funny. It's pretty funny. And we'll see how that ends up. They put Call of Duty games on the Wii U. Warzone exists on PlayStation 4, so I think there's probably a way to get that running natively on a Switch. Apex and some, Fortnite runs on the Switch. There will eventually be a replacement console that is hopefully more powerful than the Nintendo Switch, and they can put it on that as well. But we'll see what ends up happening there. They also made a similar pledge to Valve and to Steam. And so let's see here. There's a quote from Gabe Newell that Kotaku has. Because, yes, Valve confirmed it had received a draft agreement for... Yeah, okay, so this all started with a Phil Spencer tweet. I'm also pleased to confirm that Microsoft has committed to continue to offer Call of Duty on Steam simultaneously to Xbox after we have closed the merger with Activision Blizzard King. Which, okay, sure, yeah, I mean, this just happened this year of Call of Duty returning to Steam after being gone for a handful of years. And I think that makes sense because I think Battle.net, I think I'm gonna uninstall Battle.net. I wonder if Diablo will show up on Steam. I feel like it will. This is the sort of thing that probably does happen post merger, but I wonder if it's going to happen as part of the launch or not. I don't know. There's a statement from Gabe Newell to Kotaku that I think, okay, so there's no Nintendo confirmed the statement to Kotaku by saying, Nintendo confirms the accuracy of the Microsoft statement. We have nothing further to announce on this topic. Like, yeah, all right, sure. And maybe they do a cloud version on the Switch. There are cloud versions of games on Switch. Microsoft happens to make a cloud service, so they seem well equipped to make that happen if that's the way they wanted to go with it. You could even argue that this is them trying to find a way to backdoor putting xCloud stuff onto more platforms. Maybe it works out for them in that weird way. But even if it doesn't, they'll put Call of Duty on the Switch in some way, shape, or form, and it'll be fine. And so this Gabe Newell statement is funny to me. We're happy that Microsoft wants to continue using Steam to reach customers with Call of Duty when their Activision acquisition closes. Microsoft has been on Steam for a long time, and we take it as a signal that they are happy with gamers' reception to that and the work we are doing. Our job is to keep building valuable features for not only Microsoft, but for all Steam customers and partners. Microsoft offered and even sent us a draft agreement for a long-term Call of Duty commitment, but it wasn't necessary for us because A, we're not believers in requiring any partner to have an agreement that locks them to shipping games on Steam into the distant future, and B, Phil and the games team at Microsoft have always followed through on what they told us they would do, so we trust their intentions, and C, we think Microsoft has all the motivation they need to be on the platforms and devices where Call of Duty customers want to be. I think the idea of just like, oh yeah, they're going to see, like, fine, sure, yeah, okay. We don't need that. We're Steam. You come to us anyway. You're going to come to us anyway. And we trust you, which is, I think, is funny. It's funny to think about all these players and all the ins and outs of these relationships between, Tim Sweeney and Epic and the Microsoft people over the years. And some of these side stores, whether it's Valve with, obviously like Gabe and Valve, but also just like the Battle.net stuff and on all the desire to have their own launchers and all of that sort of stuff. It's interesting to see some of that stuff kind of fading into the background. Assassin's Creed showed up on Steam, so Ubisoft is at least like testing the waters all over again and all that sort of stuff. It's funny to think about, like how long ago was it that Tim Sweeney was like raging against Microsoft for building a store into its OS, and now he's just like, oh, it's fine. It's okay. You don't need, I know I said Linux on the desktop. Look, hey, it's all right. It's all right. It was 5 years, according to Kotaku, that Call of Duty was not on Steam. I guess that's right, huh? Yeah, it has been. Man, it's been a while, huh? What else? Doom is 29 years old as of earlier this month. And as of December 9th, Quake 2 is 25 years old. Obviously, next year will be a bigger anniversary for Doom, since it'll be the 30th anniversary of Doom. Jesus. 25 years for Quake 2 is a really interesting one. Especially in the context of the Doom anniversary. Think about that. Think about right now, here we are, end of 2022, and think about what games looked like 4 years ago. Well, that'd be 21, 29. What do games look like in 2018 compared to right now? You know what I mean? Like how they looked from that over that 4-year period. And now think about the distance between Doom and Quake 2 in terms of visuals, gameplay depth, capabilities, online. The distance between Doom and Quake 2 feels massive to me. It feels like a gigantic chasm was crossed in between those two times. You know, where you look at Doom and go, ha, 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 it's a kid game for kids. And you look at Quake 2 and you go, now that's the stuff I'm talking about. Now look at this goddamn video game. Look at this giant rocket launcher. Does it fire slower? Yes, it does. But it's still very good. God, I love Quake 2. And then think about what came out in 2018. We're going to look here. God of War, the previous God of War. We went from God of War to God of War Ragnarok in that same time period. Monster Hunter World came out 2018. Red Dead Redemption 2. Celeste. It's gosh, yeah. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for 2018 in video games. It says here, Yuji Naka joined Square in 2018. It's when it all started going downhill for him. It's when all the insider trading. He got rearrested, by the way. I don't have the details on the story because I just it's just like, okay. But apparently there was another incident of insider trading that they uncovered. And so they went and got him again. Jesus Christ. Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. That's not the... Yeah, it was originally 2016. Some of these are like, it's like Payday 2 is on this list, but it's like Payday 2 coming to the Switch. Yeah, Overcooked 2, Night Trap 25th Anniversary Edition. So there we go. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was 2018. Forza Horizon 4 was 2018. That's weird. I guess, I guess like the point I'm getting to, or the point I'm winding my way to, is that technology just feels like it is moving so much more slowly these days in the way that it, when you look at the distance between Doom, again, we're talking Doom 1 to Quake 2. So we got Doom 2 in there, we got Quake 1 in there, and then we got to Quake 2, and now we're looking at the same distance now, and it's God of War to God of War Ragnarok. Borderlands 2 VR came out in 2018. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate came out in 2018. And it's weird. It's weird to make those comparisons. You know, it's not fair in some ways, because obviously back then there was just that's part of the whole thing of fucking 2D to 3D, about that big transition, right? It's the whole thing of hey, we've gone from whether it's sprites or what have you into like accelerated graphics cards, happened in the middle of all of that stuff. And by the time we get to Quake 2, we've got Voodoo 2s out there with colored lighting and all of that sort of stuff. So obviously it's a very different, it's a different time. It's a different series of leaps. Whereas like the series of leaps over the last, a lot of stuff's well established now. So we've got more powerful GPUs, higher resolutions, in theory, better frame rates, but not often in practice. And all of that sort of stuff. And the internet end of it is solved in a lot of ways, right? Obviously all that stuff can always get better. Netcode is always improving. People are coming up with different methods to make stuff work and all that sort of stuff. But it's not like a zero change happened over the last 4 years. It's just like different and in some ways more silent types of change. It kind of gets back to what we were talking about with the release of the PlayStation 5 and how sometimes it feels like this generation hasn't started yet and all this sort of stuff that would, like, when their big pitch was, we're really reducing load times in video games. And when you see the games that take advantage of that on PlayStation 5, it's incredible. But most third parties aren't doing that. They aren't taking advantage of those abilities, because they're making games for multiple platforms for the lowest common denominator, and they're not going to fully take advantage of that sort of stuff. And so you end up in this situation where it's like, yeah, the PlayStation 5 is cool. The Xbox Series X is cool, but it's not that different. In the case of the Xbox, they're still just using the same dashboard. Like, it literally feels like we're just like still right there. It's the PlayStation 5, I think, is a significantly worse dashboard than the PS4, but at least it looks dramatically different in a way that you go like, well, I turned on the other thing. I turned on the new one. I don't know. It's bizarre. Whatever. We could drive ourselves insane talking about our Judgment came out in 2018 and, but maybe we just need to move on. I don't necessarily, that's the sort of stuff that a lot of people go like, oh, now I feel old. That doesn't, I don't, that stuff rarely makes me feel old. It's more just like, I think about the types of changes that were happening then compared to the types of changes that are happening now. And I don't know. You'd think that, and I'm sure if we broke it down, I'm sure if someone with true know-how about graphics technology and stuff would say, actually, you're overlooking all this crazy shit and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. But games coming out today don't feel that much different from games coming out 4 years ago. And in some cases, they are literally the same games because games have much longer tails now. And we don't see sequels as often and stuff like that. Where like Smash Brothers came out in 2018 and people are still arguing about it today. Red Dead came out 4 years ago and there are still people interested in playing it on PC and at higher resolutions and all this other stuff and all of that. So yeah, I don't know. But I think we're seeing innovation in different ways and it's in team size and the variety of games coming out and smaller teams making games again in ways that were like around then it was like, that was kind of like the start of that going away. The small teams at id making Doom and Doom 2 and Quake and, like they obviously started to get a little bit bigger. And, once the consoles had download stores on them, indie developers were not initially allowed to ship games on that without finding a publisher first. We were talking about Supergiant earlier. Warner Brothers published Bastion, presumably because it was the only way for them to get a slot on Xbox Live Arcade was to work with a publisher who already had that relationship with Microsoft. The industry used to be dramatically different back then. And so now that, everyone's open to independent publishing and all this sort of stuff and people just put out games all the time, like the industry itself has evolved in numerous different ways that I think are better for the health of the business overall. But also, like we see all, I think you can still call that innovation. I think you can still call that like things moving forward. But it doesn't move forward in the way of like, look at this colored lighting, the way Quake 2 did. Sorry, Quake 2 is a tremendous video game. What do you want me to say? Last news story, Platinum seems to think they can make a whole lot more Bayonetta games. Obviously, Bayonetta 3 just came out not that long ago, and Bayonetta Origins was announced really recently for a March release date. Kamiya said, we often talk internally about how we could make 9 of them in an IGN Japan interview. I thought this was going to be it. I don't know. I guess, maybe we're just conditioned to think about trilogies and this sort of stuff. But honestly, something about Bayonetta 3 coming out made me think, this is it. No more. This is it for Bayonetta. And then when they announced the Origin thing, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they'll do some other kind of smaller Bayonetta thing, and that'll be that. They'll do the Origin story thing, and there we go. But like, wow. I don't know, whatever. I'm not the world's biggest Bayonetta fan, but the thought of 9 Bayonetta games for some reason strikes me as insane. I don't know why. I can't quite put into words why that is. I think it's just, maybe it's just the reception to Bayonetta 3, or maybe it's, the part where Bayonetta 3 is kind of showing its age a little, or the Nintendo Switch is showing its age quite a bit, that, it feels like it's just kind of limping its way onto the finish line. Like, we got it out on the Switch, barely. But, maybe we'll get to a point where once new hardware is out and all this other stuff, that'll change. But I feel like the reception to Bayonetta 3 being as mixed as it has been, also sort of maybe is leading to me thinking like, I don't know that they need to make 9 of these, or maybe even another one of these, but we'll see. I thought that was just an interesting little tidbit there, on the heels of them announcing that Origin thing, which is, I don't know. It felt like Tuesday. Maybe again, I think it's because of the reception of Bayonetta 3 that the idea of the Origin thing coming out so soon was just like, man, I don't know. People are already kind of unhappy about Bayonetta. I don't know that I would announce and put out another one this soon. I might let this one settle a little bit before you try and come back and hit them again. But we'll see. I wonder if Nintendo will be involved with this franchise for the rest of its existence, or if they end up getting out there and putting them back on other platforms or whatever. I'm not sure. Why don't we get into emails here before we send it on home? What am I doing? I'm pushing buttons. What buttons am I pushing? I'm pushing the buttons to bring up my email. That's what I'm pushing. Gosh, my brain. I don't have an email music button, but I do have this button. We'll hit this for a sec. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send your emails in, and I will take a look at them. And I will select some of them. And then furthermore, I will read some of them. How about that? All right, we need to stop this music. Goes for another 2 minutes, but it's just too loud. It's too banging. It's too much. I get it. Burton from Colorado writes in and says, I thought this story may be semi-interesting to you. It's a different type of esports cheating. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Zwift. Zwift is a video game of sorts. You hook a physical stationary bike or treadmill, and your actual physical output on these devices controls your character in Zwift. It's pretty big in the cycling world. They also have their own esports league called the Zwift Racing League, or ZRL, in which legitimate pro and amateur cyclists race against each other on Zwift. So to shorten this up a little bit, a rider named Eddie Hool was recently caught cheating, and apparently Hool competed in a race and was able to generate around 25% more power on his bike than Olympic and Tour de France cyclists. And Zwift did a big, long investigation and detailed exactly what happened, and then they banned this guy from stationary bike competitions. And there's a bunch of charts and graphs and all of this other stuff. The rider's performance in the above-named event was determined by power data given by their trainer and not by their power meter. Given that their dual recording of the event showed that their power meter and trainer gave similar values throughout the event, this therefore means that their trainer must have also been very significantly miscalibrated compared to the power they're actually producing, and the amount by which their trainer was miscalibrated almost exactly matched the amount by which their power meter was miscalibrated. For obvious reasons, it's highly unlikely that two completely independent pieces of equipment would both be so badly miscalibrated by the exact same amount by accident. Yeah, this is pretty awesome. Pursuant to Appendix B of the Zwift Cycling Esports Rules and Regulations, the board has therefore decided that a Tier 3 sanction, and the quote here is, bringing the sport into disrepute, shall be applied and the rider shall receive a 6-month suspension from all events. So until May 12th, this rider is not able to... If within 1 month of issuing of this decision, the rider can perform an independent laboratory test and anti-doping test to the satisfaction of Zwift that shows that they are naturally physiologically capable of producing the results they have recorded in this event, the board will happily reverse its decision. He now has a 6-month ban. This is back to the email from Burton. He now has a 6-month ban, but Hool has since deleted all data from his previous races, and his website is currently down for maintenance. His esports team has also announced they dropped him. It's not entirely known what he was doing, but essentially he was able to intercept the data his bike was generating, alter it, and then send that data to Zwift during the race. That's why. Well, I guess if he was part of some esports team, then there's probably some sponsorship money or something involved. So that's probably your why, right? I guess he's just the Billy Mitchell of the cycling world or something. Man, that's what a weird grim future we live in. Cheating in fake bike races. Ben in Boston writes in and says, you've often talked about how cool it is that the Mister plays old games so accurately. How important is it to you that the controller you play them with also be accurate? Do you mind playing NES games on an Xbox controller? Is the physical, tactile aspect of playing a game a different consideration in your mind than the accuracy of the on-screen aspects? I do not use original controllers with those. There is a method there's hardware you can get and hook up to a Mister to use original controllers with them. I don't want to jump through those hoops. That's not that interesting to me. I think as I have grown, the NES controller I find to be way too small and actually very uncomfortable. And so I don't like using the original NES controller anymore. Whereas, I am a big proponent of not using crappy third-party controllers on some of those old systems. Especially the N64. Like, I feel like all the third-party N64 controllers were just garbage. So for me, it's come down to, like, I want a controller with a really good D-pad. I would like a controller that has 6 buttons on the face. And this is considering the number of different systems that a Mister can use, which goes from all the way down to single button systems like the Commodore 64, all the way up to the Saturn. Probably is the most complex. Well, I mean, it does sort of play some Jaguar games as well, but the Saturn with 6 buttons on the face and 2 shoulder buttons. So I've been using one of these with the Mister. It is the Hori Fighting Commander gamepad, and it's got 6 on the face. It's got 4 shoulder buttons on it as well, and so you can use this with the PlayStation Core for games that don't require the analog sticks, which turns out it is most of them. You can also play 6-button Genesis games on this really well. Obviously, Saturn games are really good with this. I will say that the square button, I got the PlayStation version of the controller, the square button is starting to stick a little bit, and that's unfortunate. But I think this is a pretty good controller. I think the shoulder buttons could feel a little bit better and stuff like that. But I also, when selecting that controller, part of my consideration was latency on the controller itself. And so there is a gigantic spreadsheet run by Porkchop Express, who runs MrAddons.com, who has tested a lot of controllers and tested a lot of latency in these controllers to figure out which ones work best with the Mister. I wanted a wired controller that was very low latency that also met these standards of the buttons on the face and all this sort of stuff. And this was the best combo for, you know, a very low latency controller that had what I was looking for. And it's mostly, again, except for that one button that sticks on it, it has been a really good controller for everything except for things that require an analog stick, which really is just the PlayStation. So for the PlayStation, I may acquire the device, the hardware that you need to hook up actual PlayStation controllers and go that route with it, mostly because I want to use some of the weirder PlayStation controllers, like the Negcon. Did we ever settle on a pronunciation for that Namco controller? Also the JogCon. I'm making JogCon motions with my hands now. And that sort of stuff. So I want to play some Ridge Racer. I want to play some Wipeout XL with the controller. That thing had analog buttons on it as well. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Some people want to have the purest experience possible, and so they go get the snack controller adapters to use real hardware on the Mister and all that sort of stuff. But that's before I was using this, and I probably would still use it in a situation where I was playing PlayStation stuff. I got it's not within arm's reach. I see it from here, but it's the 8-Bit Dough made a controller that looks like a SNES controller, but has 4 shoulder buttons and analog sticks on it. And it's a pretty good controller. Pretty good compact controller that has all the things you want from a modern controller. If this thing was ever going to play PlayStation 2 games, then maybe you would want analog buttons and a more codified standard and all that sort of stuff. But like, that's so rare, and so few PlayStation 2 games even use the analog buttons that it's probably fine without it. Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I think different people have different things they're looking for, but for me, it was the configuration of the controller and how versatile that controller would be, and also the latency of it overall. So that was what I was looking for. Tyler in Washington says, do you think ragdoll physics in AAA games will ever improve in a big way? As a kid, I was absolutely mesmerized by the ragdoll physics in games like Psyops and Half-Life 2. When I saw a tech demo for the Euphoria engine back in 2005, I was blown away. I figured this was going to set the standard for the future. Fast forward nearly 18 years later, and most games are still using basic ragdolls except for Rockstar and a handful of indies. Why has the industry settled for this for so long? I feel like good physics can add a lot to a game's fun factor and can really make a game feel truly next gen. I don't know. I think that, like we're probably seeing like more complicated or more detailed, I guess, what's the word? Like riggings, for character models and stuff like that. But it probably takes a lot of juice, probably takes a lot of power if you want to start having more advanced ragdoll sort of things. Yeah, Neva in the chat is saying it's because it takes less computational power, and that warrants the trade-off. That, the work you would have to do, or the cycles you would have to spend to have better ragdoll might take away from other aspects of the game, and so they just go with it. Some people think, and I have at times in the past, that ragdoll is hilarious, and I think in certain situations it truly is. But I don't know. You have these, you have these aspects of like, in Call of Duty even, there are situations where bodies will go flying and they just look ridiculous. I think it actually works in this situation where, that game is a little ridiculous. Like I saw a video of someone sticking a thermite charge to the bottom of a helicopter that was deploying AI I think it was in the DMZ mode or something. And the thermite hits the bottom of the helicopter, and then like 8 bodies just fly out of the helicopter. It's really dumb. And they fall and they ragdoll and they do their thing, and it's very silly and pretty good. But yeah, it's we haven't really beat ragdoll physics that much. Yeah, I mean you do see some games kind of trying to do more than that, or trying to make their ragdoll look, kind of rein it in, right? Have like tasteful ragdoll as opposed to physics nonsense ragdoll. And I could take either. It's not something. I don't know that I'm trying to think about games I've noticed that have had really good ragdoll that felt like more than just like basic ragdoll. And you're saying Rockstar games and a handful of indies, but I'm struggling to even think in those situations what actually looked better about Rockstar's ragdoll or Rockstar's kind of death animations or whatever compared to some of that other stuff. So I don't know. Sean writes in from Detroit. When Nintendo first announced they were delaying Advanced Wars, I was pretty annoyed. I thought it was a silly overreaction. But after thinking about it, remembering how flippant Advanced Wars treats war, I even thought it was kind of weird as a kid, and contrasting that with the horrors of the Ukraine war, I think it was both a smart business move and, more importantly, a compassionate move. Do you recall any other game releases or content releases that were affected by major events? I think the go-to ends up being GTA 3, and I think Metal Gear Solid 2 had some minor changes in it as well. There was that Spider-Man movie poster, and they have to take the Twin Towers out of that. But it's all like the 9/11 stuff. Yeah, 6 Days in Fallujah. The game was getting close to done, and then they ended up killing it because it was a fucking bad idea. And now apparently it is, like they're still trying to bring it back. The Advance Wars stuff, like I keep forgetting that happened, because it's been so long at this point. And yeah, Propeller Arena, Live Evil in the chat says Propeller Arena. That was one that, it was an airplane flying game, all that sort of stuff. But also, we were coming up on the end of the Dreamcast a little bit, and but yeah, the Advance Wars was now I wonder if they're just like looking for a good window to release it in or to reintroduce it in. Do you think they have to remarket it, or do they just ship it? They probably have to like remarket it and say, hey, here's what Advance Wars is, it's still coming. And all of that, but I don't know. It's if they're going to wait for that conflict to end, it's not like that's going to. Well, whatever. I'm not going to predict the future on what Russia is doing. But. I don't know. Does that drag out long enough that Nintendo finally just goes like, all right, here's our tank games, or do they just keep holding it? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is there. It did seem like it was something that was kind of coming from the right place, right? That there's like, hey, I also see how it could be seen as just like a bit of an overreaction. But that's going to play differently depending on where in the world you are, and I think it's very easy to sit there and focus on the American news cycle and how much or how little we talk about the situation in Ukraine these days compared to when that first kicked off. In different parts of the world, I'm sure it's a much more frequent topic of conversation. And if Nintendo wants to sell games worldwide, they have to consider those territories as well. So I think that's probably where they're at with that stuff. I don't know. Nintendo finishes games and then sits on them for a long time anyway. So it's hard to it's hard to really think about how that ends up going. I don't know. I mean, with Advance Wars specifically, I mean, how that ends up going. Joe in Seattle says, me and my boys have been enjoying this year's Call of Duty. That being said, the multiplayer maps are mostly middling to absolute dog shit. And he says, that border crossing map, fuck. I'm going to stop right there and say I disagree. I think that a lot of those maps are pretty good. I don't like the fortress that much because it really does just become about those windows on the building. I think the border crossing map is really interesting and a different sort of map than the one that they normally do. And I like that it's got weird long sight lines, but also kind of creepy crawly up close shit too. It's an interesting mix, I think. Anyway, us bitching about the maps led to a thought experiment. For Modern Warfare 2 2022, why not simply remaster all of the original Modern Warfare 2 2009 maps, at least as a base platform of maps for the game? Every single one of those maps is a masterpiece. I'd pay fucking anything for that, and so would all the other Call of Duty freaks out there. I played the shit out of that game for years, and doing more of it at 120 hertz with the new gun system sounds fantastic. So why not doing it? Even writing this, I know they'd never do it, and it doesn't actually make sense, but I don't know why it doesn't make sense. Help me. Cheers, Joe in Seattle. Joe, my understanding, I feel like this was part of the... Because, okay, so if we take the reporting at face value that they are not going to put a full-fledged game out next year, and that they are instead going to release a big update in the November-ish, October-ish, November-ish timeframe next year, my understanding is that a big part of that update was supposed to be updated versions of the original Modern Warfare 2 maps. I thought that that's literally what that part of that, I think that was part of that reporting, was that yes, there are plans underway to do something with those maps. And so, yes, I suspect by this time next year, you will have what you are looking for. And maybe then you will realize that those maps, while good at the time, are not the best maps ever. And they have, you have gotten better, and the game has become a lot more, there's quite a bit more depth to that action than there was then. And so those maps have holes in them that will only be revealed by you taking the Modern Warfare 2, the current year's loadouts and concepts onto these old maps. And then you'll go like, oh God, this map's broken. And so, yeah, I don't know. I remember like, yes, that was when it was all still new. And so, yes, I think those maps were really good in their day, but I also think that we were not as critical of multiplayer map design then as we are now, because we have seen so many more years of it now. And so, I think the idea of Call of Duty map design, I mean, Call of Duty map design is, it's there are, you want to have very few places. If you're making a Call of Duty map, you want to have very few places on the map that there is only one way in and out of, because you don't create too many of those choke points. Even on Fortress, you have the spots where you can get into those windows and stuff like that. And you think, oh, well, it kind of dead ends there. It's like, yes, but there's also a window there and people are getting shot through that window all the fucking time. And so there aren't too many spots in those maps where you don't just get fucking shot in the back, or that you can't get rolled up on, I guess is the point, right? Like that's how they make those maps. That's how Call of Duty maps. Abby knows. Abby Russell in the chat knows. She can make a Call of Duty map. I know it. Hi, how's it going? I'm looking at the wrong camera. Hi, what's going on? Like, oh fuck, man. Anyway. I understand Abby was at the Game Awards. I did not see Abby at the Game Awards, unfortunately. But I saw pictures. Damn it. Oh well. Yeah, so I think you'll get what you're looking for in terms of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 maps in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I think they will do that. And then what? Shipment's supposed to be out tomorrow, right? Their mid-season update's supposed to hit tomorrow with their first raid, and I think it'd be really funny if that raid was full of a bunch of fucking Destiny-style raid concepts. If it was just like, all right, to do damage to this boss, you have to stand here and do this, and then there's going to be a glowing ball, and then Captain Price has to get the glowing ball, and then he puts a cigar out on it, and then dunks the ball, and then that makes the shield break, and then you have 15 seconds that you can shoot the guy in the face, but then the armor reforms, and they should do that. And we'll see what else they fix. I know there's a balance pass that comes with this update as well, and people are complaining about different maps and different different guns and loadouts and some of the other stuff you can do. And I know there's spots in the map you can jump up and hide in the walls. There's a bunch of parts of the maps that probably need to be closed up to keep people from getting where they're not supposed to be and all that sort of shit. And I don't know. I'm having a great time with that game. Yes, it needs more work, but I think people who are like, they shipped this way too early, I can't believe it. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's some weird shit going on in Warzone, but also sometimes that shit's super fun. So at least it's not like the week 1 crash bugs. It's like, oh man, there was a really funky situation here, or maybe there's a strategy that's a little overpowered or a little too much right now. Like, it seems to be people getting up in a helicopter and just hiding up there for most of the Warzone match, and then landing to refuel, and then just hiding up in the sky and letting everyone else fight. And I don't know. It's a valid strategy. I think it's annoying, but I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily one that absolutely has to be fixed, but maybe you just put a few more launchers on the map, give people a few more options for dealing with the helicopter or whatever when people do shit like that, or have when the gas closes in, it also closes in from above so that people up in the helicopter get gassed first. I don't know. There's other silly shit they could do there. We'll see. But whatever. I like that game. I'm interested in the idea of the raid, but also I didn't play all the Spec Ops stuff. So you need to play Spec Ops to tier up your kits to have the right guns for the raid, and you have to get a raid key once a week and all. It's like they made it more complicated than just like push a button, start a match. But I think it's kind of neat in a weird way. Like, that game's weird. Like, the number of things that are just like strange and obfuscated in that game. There really is some of the stuff that they took from some of the things they did in Warzone over the years of like, oh, there's a weird fucking bunker here. And like the Battle Royale games do from season to season to kind of freshen them up. It's like they're applying more of that to different parts of the game where it's like, if you find this key and then you take this key over to grid point E4 and then you open up that, there's a fucking laptop. You take this laptop over here and put it in here. Then you take it and you take the laptop back and put it on this pad, and then that completes a mission. And it's, like all the weird mission-based stuff in DMZ and all the other stuff they've done that that kind of make it a bit more than just smoke fools, I think is it's welcome. Yeah, some of that is Tarkov stuff for sure. But like even the way that they've put the missions and the way the progression of a Warzone match for just like, okay, you're going to work towards this to get your armor, then you're going to work towards this to get your gun, and then work towards this to get your loadout, and then you're tiered up, you're ready for the end game, and like the idea that that's all stuff that can happen over the course of a match. It gives you things to strive for other than I've got to hide in this bathroom and make sure no one shoots me. They're finding ways to make you more active because it is improving your character and making you more ready for the later fights. And I think that that's an interesting progression. They got there with Warzone 1, but like I kind of fell off Warzone 1, so I didn't play a ton of it as they added some of those things in. So kind of seeing the fruits of that kind of roll their way into the new Warzone stuff, I think is it's interesting. It makes it more than just like, where we dropping boys, we got to smoke these fools. Like there's so much more to it than that, because it's like, now I'm trying to get shit done, and then occasionally other players are going to be in my way, and we got to deal with that while we go try to complete this mission. And also the gas is closing in, and also like all that sort of stuff. We've been if you're on the Discord, if you're on the Patreon over at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann, we have been passing the gun around a little bit. The M13, the rifle that is only available if you steal it off the chemist in the DMZ mode. Dalton and Fish and some other people. We spent some time over the weekend. It's like, you can just take that gun now that if you have that gun, you can go into a DMZ match and drop it, and then someone else can pick it up, and then you can extract, and then you will unlock the gun without having to go into the radioactive zone and kill the chemist and all this other stuff. And so, yes, there's been there's a Call of Duty specific channel under game threads on that Discord that if you want to get your hands on that gun, some folks have been doling it out a little bit, and it seems okay. Low level, not that great, but as I have leveled it up and put some different attachments on it to rein it in a little bit, it's like, okay, this thing seems all right. Anyway, that's going to do it for emails. Again, podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in your emails to me, and I will look at them. I promise. I do look at them all. I don't read them all 100%, but I look at them. What else is going on this week? I don't know. The fucking High on Life is out this morning, or I guess late last night. The new Squanch Games first-person shooter. That thing looks... You try not to have preconceived notions going into a game. But that thing looks like the most fucking abysmal fucking thing I've ever seen. Like what is the opposite of comedy? Is how that thing comes across to me. Just like, Jesus. Ugh. Looks rough. But it is out this week and it is new, and so part of me is like, well, shit, maybe, should we take a look at that? So I don't know. That is at least on the list for now. I don't know if people want to see any of that, but Pat kind of makes me want to see it and is also making me sad. It says the voice list looks like a Comedy Bang Bang special. Like, oh man, if they got a bunch of good people to do the voice work in it, but that all the writing, ugh. Brr. All right, well, I'll look into it a little bit, and maybe that's at least on the list. But yeah, I don't know. We're kind of we're so close to the end of the year. It feels like the new release calendar is drying up quickly. Next year looks pretty stacked, but we say that every December, and then all those games get delayed, and so we'll see what it ends up really looking like. But yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about the year that was and all that sort of stuff, and going like, you know what? There's some amazing video games came out this year. God, that's right. I lose track of the calendar so easily these days. The Street Fighter closed beta is open again this weekend. So if that's open early enough on Friday, I will probably play that on Friday. And then tomorrow for Wednesday, we'll see. Maybe we'll take a brief glance at this High on Life. That's what it's called. I always forget. I keep wanting to say Drawn to Death or Drawn, and that's, yep. Anyway, check those streams out or come back on Tuesday. The podcast is every Tuesday. It's every damn Tuesday. Ain't no breaks. This podcast, the podcast is like a truck with no brakes. It don't stop. You know what I'm saying? Just like the RBL posse. The fuck am I talking about? Anyway, I'm going to go. All right, everybody, have yourself a great rest of your week. That's the podcast. Take care of yourselves. Again, I'm probably streaming Wednesday and Friday if you want to catch those. And we'll take a look at the Street Fighter stuff on Friday if the timing works out. And I am fucking excited to play some more Street Fighter 6. Oh my God. So yeah. Hell yeah. Have a good one, everybody. And I'll see you. And right. I didn't, well, I got it. Okay. we gotta play the music. Sorry, I forgot to play the music. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm gonna experiment more with some of these OBS settings, like I was saying, and think about ways to have a different exported recorded video than the one that's being streamed out, and maybe I can do a higher quality local recording so the archive looks better than the stream or whatever. I don't know. I gotta fuck with all this stuff now that now that I got this graphics card and I can encode all these videos super fast and it's all fancy. That stuff's nuts. So until then,
Enjoy your game. Enjoy your game.
Mushroom Kingdom, here we come.
The Undertaker. Just the Undertaker.
And don't forget the Joe.